Allegations of domestic abuse were filed and facts were found sufficient. The Commonwealth's motion to impound or redact confidential information has been allowed. The defendant's motion to release an unredacted police narrative has also been allowed.
He's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio live from the Boston Public Library, streaming on Facebook.com/GBH News and YouTube.com/GBH News. I should say we are not here Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, but we'll be back next Tuesday, and we'll be joined by the Governor, Maura Healey, November 27th at our Brighton studios from 12 to 1.
Hi, Marjorie. So before we get started, I wanted to spend a minute and pay tribute to a wonderful soul, a political strategist and organizer extraordinaire. John Walsh just died, and I have to say there was no one quite like John. Here's a little bit of sound from him. He was on Greater Boston with me in 2018. Discussing the potential for a blue wave that November and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's success. Here he is.
What Ocasio did was stood up for what she believed in. She worked like hell in a grassroots campaign on the ground, engaging people, and challenged the status quo that she disagreed with. I think if Democrats do that all across the country, it will give a different mix of policy positions in different places, but the philosophy of that kind of hard work, tell the truth, stand up for what you believe in, that's how we win.
That's how we win, and that's how he and Deval Patrick won the governor's race when absolutely nobody thought Deval Patrick was a credible candidate for that job.
Well, you know, there's a certain theme to the reaction of John Walsh's death, and that's that all these people, so many people in politics, couldn't have achieved what they did without him.
It's huge.
And, of course, remember what he did for you and me?
I didn't remember till you reminded me a couple of minutes ago.
Yeah.
Tell people.
Well, he got us Barack
He
Obama.
did.
When Barack Obama was president of the United States, Deval Patrick was winding up his term, and John Walsh got Barack Obama to call in, pretending to be Barry from Somerville.
One of the best
to
moments
talk
we ever had
to
on the
Deval
show.
Patrick. Deval Patrick, remember Deval Patrick's reaction? He thought it was a hoax.
He thought it was an
He didn't
impersonator
believe.
at the beginning.
He didn't
By the way,
believe.
for whatever it's worth, I had forgotten about that till you mentioned it. I'm embarrassed to say. I called John Walsh 6 months in advance of Deval Patrick's last Ask the Governor with us, and he worked on that for 6 months.
Yeah.
And literally a couple of days before Governor Patrick's final show, Walsh calls me, John calls me on the phone and says, we got him. We got him, meaning
No, he
Barack
was
Obama. Just a really, as brilliant as he was, if you go to Twitter, one of the few good things that happens there, not only have people talked about his brilliance in terms of his skills, but he was really a decent, warm human being.
And you never really hear that on Twitter, do you?
No, you don't.
Even when someone has passed away, and he passed away much too young.
In any case, John Walsh. Moving on, before you spend Thanksgiving lamenting or maybe lambasting President Biden for confusing Taylor Swift with Britney Spears yesterday, think twice and read this new article in the New York Times headline. This is incredible. More Americans say they're in a cognitive fog. And adults, listen to this age range, And adults, this is the headline, in their 20s, 30s, and 40s are driving the trend.
Yeah.
More Americans are experiencing difficulty focusing, remembering than at any other time in decades. Researchers say this captures the effects of long COVID for a small but significant portion of younger adults, forget older adults who always had that issue. In addition, other things like psychological distress, the state of the world, the state of our country. So if you are experiencing any of this, give us a buzz, 877-301-8970, particularly if you're in that age group, the 20s, 30s, 40s. Call or text. Maybe it's, daylight saving hangover, forced to reckon with the oppressive trade-off of 1 extra hour of sleep for months of darkness. Marjorie, I wasn't here yesterday. I'm told you forgot all your notes at home. Our producers forgot to send us half the show prep last night, and as far as I'm concerned, we'll get to that in a minute. So why are our brains turning to mush? Brains of all ages. Are you one of the people who's having trouble focusing, concentrating, remembering, and are you embracing the confusion? Who needs to remember anything anyway? 877-301-8970. By the way, I totally buy the long COVID thing because I think I have long COVID. I've told you for weeks now. But beyond that,
You are slower than you used to be, Jim.
well, I'm going to do my best imitation of you. Well, I am not a doctor or a medical health researcher. Don't you think when you're surrounded by pain in the world, in this country, the threat of democracy disappearing, that it's not surprising that you have brain fog and all this cognitive stuff?
Well, I think there is a lot of economic anxiety among people
of course.
Because student loans, they can't afford their rents, they can't afford to buy a house, all these things they feel they're slipping behind. But there's some testimonials in this Wall Street Journal piece from people who did have COVID. They talked to this young 31-year-old Heather Carr woman, agriculture machine parts worker in Syracuse. She had 2 coronavirus infections. She couldn't even get out of bed. She couldn't string together, she says, a basic train of thought. She had trouble staying awake while driving and had to quit her job. And they talk about this other guy, a 30-year-old software engineer from California, got COVID. Within a month, he felt like he was permanently hungover, drunk, high, and in a brain freeze all at once. He stopped dating. This is a real sign of trouble. He stopped playing video games, Jim. And he kept his job, but it was a real struggle. What are you laughing at?
Did you see the note Jamie wrote me?
Oh, it's in the New York Times, not the Wall Street Journal. Whoops!
Oh, wait, who said that? Me or Marjorie? Marjorie did?
I thought it was in the Wall Street Journal.
But can I tell you
Didn't you tell me
something?
it was in the Wall Street Journal this morning?
You know
No,
what?
he didn't.
You know,
Okay.
Marjorie, on an unrelated note,
I love the Wall Street Journal.
I'm a little offended.
Even though they have a nutty editorial page.
I had an important dental appointment this morning. It was really making me nervous.
That's
and you
right.
haven't even asked me how I did.
That's right. How did you do, Jim?
Well, I didn't do, because I got there at 8 o'clock for my dentist appointment, and it's actually March 11th.
Yeah.
So that's what prompted us to buy into this thing. I don't think I've ever, you do that occasionally.
I do.
I don't think
I'm
I
a
ever in my
basket
life
case.
have gone to an appointment that I didn't have
Yeah.
until today, and I think it's part of this fog thing.
But I've always been a basket case, so I can't blame this on COVID or the terrible state of the world.
I don't know if you're
I've been.
supposed to say basket case anymore.
You're not supposed to say basket case anymore? Is that wrong?
I don't know.
Well,
Well, you are.
Ditz,
So, I mean,
whatever you
it's
want to
fine,
call
yeah.
it. I mean, I would forget. I take my children to birthday parties on the wrong day, that kind of stuff. I mean,
Well, you can still have fun while you're out. You just have fun.
it's pretty embarrassing to arrive with somebody's house with your kid all dressed up and their present.
I'm sitting
And
in the
they say,
dentist
present
office.
tomorrow, not today.
I'm sitting in the waiting area, and the woman looks at me and says, Jim? I go, hi, how are you? Nice to see you. She says, you don't have an appointment today. So I said I decided to just come by and say hello. Now go off to work. That is a totally true story. 877-301-8970. I want to say it again. The story in the New York Times is
Not the Wall
attributing
Street Journal.
we have a Wall Street Journal story at the end of the show. That's why you did that thing. Well, they're saying it's mostly long COVID, and I buy that. I think a lot of people with long COVID, I am telling you, when you are surrounded by misery and fear everywhere you turn, it's not, to me, it's not a surprising consequence.
And one more thing before we get to the calls and texts. Did you mention the pandemic?
No.
Because that's one of the other things that people think
Oh,
this
you mean
has a lot to do with.
loneliness and isolation?
No. It's just
What?
that they interviewed this actress. She's 34 years old. She said spike in anxiety and depression spiked with the pandemic. And at the same time, her memory began to slip, which is a problem if you're an actress trying to remember lines. She said she had, it fell short of, the serious difficulty, like can't get out of bed, but it was worse than anything she'd experienced. She never even tested positive for COVID, so it wasn't an infection, but she was part of a wait staff at a restaurant, and she could no longer remember the order. She had to write everything down. And this, she said, was not COVID, it was the pandemic.
Can I ask you one last thing?
Mental health. Have you read about mental health problems that are taking over the nation?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Essentially, it's not surprising that people are suffering from more mental health issues. And this, to me, is a national One last question before we get to the calls. This has been a fabulous, fabulous rehearsal. When does the show start? What time? The show started at 11 o'clock. Oh. 877-301-8970. We're talking about brain fog and particularly the stunning part of this, they call it cognitive fog in the New York Times, that adults in their 20s, 30s, and 40s are driving the trend. Why are you laughing?
Because we have some good texts.
Why?
Eric from Lynn, I thought I had something insightful to say, but I forget what it was. And to Steve from Wayland, many times I wish I was in a fog. Actually, I were in a fog, I guess is what
I wanted to correct the texter. Can we
Molly from Medford's talking about perimenopause and parenting a little child really mixes you up as well. And that's,
but that's
a very
not
good
a new
point.
phenomenon, is
no,
it?
It's
okay.
not.
Jesse in Southeast, and you're first. I think you're first. You are on Boston Public Radio. Welcome, Jesse. Hi.
Hi. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Big fan, and thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
So I have a perspective, which is I'm about 40 years old, and when I was 5 years old, I was, like many, many other people, diagnosed with ADHD, and spent, better part of a decade on Ritalin, Adderall, Focalin, several different stimulants, or, to help with that. And in my adulthood, I've found ways to cope with it where I no longer need medication. So there's the backstory. So my experience has been that I find that due to a confluence of several things, one of which being screens, social media, the pandemic, of course, I find that my peers have kind of caught up with me over the decades. And what for me is like a dopamine-related issue, and for what many people has now become chronic stress due to bad diets, poor fitness routines, and most of all, just an insane amount of screen time. And I notice it in myself, and especially in my children who are diagnosed with ADHD, that when I am failing them as a parent and I'm not regulating their interaction and their interface with screen time, which, by the way, is completely sucked up in terms of the healthy amount that they can receive by their interaction with school, that I see our habits trending towards the negative, and people disconnecting and getting depressed, and their brains getting foggy. And
I totally buy it.
Just,
Go ahead. I'm sorry,
ADHD.
Thank you. No, that's quite all right. I would love to hear the validation from you guys that I think it's a very simple social psychosis that we want to conflate, and that really COVID and, maybe long COVID, sure, I can't deny that experience in people, but COVID is really just the one unifying societal experience that we all have that makes us take pause and say, hey, something is really off here, and we're not having a huge amount of joy in our lives anymore.
Jesse, that was a great beautiful call. And sad point. Thank you for the call.
And by the way, in this same story, they talk about experts on disability are talking about many factors responsible for this brain fog thing, including rising HDHD and autism diagnoses in children. And that's helping people recognize some of their cognitive difficulties, but it's also a reality in people's lives. So we have a little running battle among the texters, or between the texters, I should say, about marijuana use. This is from Andrew in Lowell. Says, I've been in a fog for the last 3 years. Without a doubt, we're overworked, anxious, overwhelmed. We started to partake in recreational marijuana, but several people, including Valerie from Brookline and somebody else who didn't sign it, said more people are smoking weed, and the rise in brain fog is caused by the legalization of weed. We can now, so we do everywhere.
Do you buy that?
Even behind the wheel. Well, I think certainly there's a lot of evidence, although we haven't researched marijuana that well. Marijuana is very bad for your short-term memory. If people that smoke a lot of marijuana, they if they're high, often can't remember what they said like a minute ago, right?
Let me ask you, do you think, I'm sorry to make this about me, but just for a second, do you think even though I went on the wrong day by 5 months, 4 months, they should have taken me anyway? Or just thought about that.
You could have said,
I
Jim,
love my dentist.
don't you know who I am? I'm a very busy man.
Actually, I did do that. They still said your appointment is not today.
Oh, that's too bad, Jim. Well, it was worth a try. Albert from Boston, thank you for calling.
Hello, Albert.
Hey, how's it going?
Fine, thank you.
Yeah, so I'm a chef at a new restaurant in the Fenway neighborhood.
Oh.
And so a lot of my day revolves around time management and managing multiple tasks at a time. And I may be a bit of a candidate for long COVID, but I have a hard time keeping my ducks in a row, and especially when it comes to delegating tasks or even just telling my significant other stories. I find myself repeating myself all the time, telling my chef, did I tell you about the guy who wants to give us corn, stuff like that.
And what do you attribute it to, Albert?
Could be long COVID, I don't know, but maybe just the adjustment after having the COVID break, but brain fog has been terrible. I'm 31 years old. I don't know if it's a thing based around my age range or what. But.
Well, they say in the New York Times, the subhead, as I said, the trend is being driven by 20, 30, and 40-year-olds. Albert, what's the name of the new restaurant where you're a chef in the Fenway?
It's called DW French. It's a French restaurant.
Oh, this is
part of the
Douglas.
Mita family.
Right, from Mita, right. His new restaurant. That's terrific.
Oh, great.
Yeah, we've had him on the show. We should have him on again soon. How's the food?
He's a great guy. Fantastic. I love French food, and I'm so happy. I just came down to the area recently. I'm so happy to be a part of this.
I'm so glad to hear that, Albert. And send him our best and tell him we'll be in touch soon. You've been to Mita, which
Yes,
is his
it's a
other
wonderful
restaurant.
place
It's
on
fabulous.
Tremont Street, right?
Well, yeah, now it's 3. He's
Mass
got
Ave
3
and
Mitas.
Tremont.
New
3 Mitas.
East Boston, and then now this new French restaurant of his in the Fenway.
Well, the one I went to on Columbus Ave in Tremont was great.
Fabulous.
A lot of people are talking about marijuana affecting their memory. This is, as a long-time sufferer from insomnia and smoking pot to help me sleep, I can attest that laying off daily cannabis use improves my short-term memory dramatically. And a lot of people are blaming social media, the constant, going from screen to screen to screen to screen. And there's been a lot written about how that affects your ability to concentrate for long periods of time.
That's in part what the first caller was talking about. By the way, the name of the guy who owns, we should have said, Douglas Williams, is the wonderful, talented guy who owns all 4 of those restaurants. So go patronize his new place in the Fenway. 877-301-8970. You notice first person that called 40, second person 31, adding some random confirmation to this New York Times thing that it's not just older people who are doing the brain fog thing.
That's right. It's not just Joe
Doesn't
Biden
it make you feel
and
better?
Donald Trump who's talking about World War II instead of World War III and thinks he ran against Barack Obama.
This is Donald Trump we're
Donald
talking
Trump.
about.
That's right.
By the way, we can talk to John King about this. I guess I know the answer. Why is it when I would argue that if there were a side-by-side comparison, many more mistakes are made, many, I don't mean
By Trump.
lies, forget the lies,
Yeah.
we know when he's lying. Many more mistakes are made by Trump than are made by Biden. Is it because he's more high energy
No,
than
I think it's because of how he
Biden?
looks. I mean, Trump
that's
looks
it.
like a big barreling guy, and Biden looks frail and looks like he's unsteady on his feet. I mean, Trump
I would
has,
say more like a big barreling felon is what you mean, or insurrectionist. Is that not what you mean?
you could say that.
Let's go to Kaylin. Hey, how are you, Kaylin? In Denver. Kaylin, when Kaylin was here, would visit us at the library. Hey, Kaylin, what's going on?
Hey, both. How are you doing?
Fine,
Excellent.
thank you.
Nice to hear from you. What's up?
I had a professor at Syracuse that used to always tell me that there's no such thing as multitasking, that as well-intentioned as it is, you never actually get things done as well as you intended
I agree with
to
that.
do.
I agree with
I
that.
think that across our entire world right now with politics and mental health, physical health, finances, social, professional life, whatever it may be, we're basically trying to do everything as best as we possibly can, and that's like a very severe form of multitasking. And to escape this, we look for distractions and things to pull us in a different direction from, whether it be the wars or, again, our personal finances or whatever, and that just continues to add more to the mix. And so instead of dialing things back and focusing on what actually matters that we can control, we look to our screens and more news cycles and more outlets to be able to sort of escape from this. And that just continues to add more and more to the mix that is only, I think, hurting us in the long road.
I think that's a fabulous analysis.
Yeah,
Thank you. It's good to hear
that
from
is-
you, Kaylin. Hope
that
you're
is
well out there in Denver.
A great one. Lori from Malden says she's had long COVID for 6 months, been exhausted, climbing stairs was overwhelming. 2 years later, she feels better, but slower, and she was recently diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, and a rheumatologist said they're seeing a lot more of these new cases and weird things related to people who have had COVID. What?
I'm sorry. I just can't, I'm not laughing, obviously, at that person's travails.
Yes.
I can't get over the fact that I not only went to the dentist on the wrong day. I know it's like a broken record, but I just sat there, like nothing, just waiting to be. Jim, Mr. Brody. It's Browdy, actually. Mr. Browdy. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Well, I mean, you're right. You're like Mr.
I am really, but I am
date book
sort
and
of
calendar.
anal. I was just going to say, I'm anally
You're very
precise
anal.
in
We all
terms
know
of
that, Jim.
appointments and things,
Extremely anal.
which is really trouble. Well,
Over the top.
You said it once.
Anal.
Okay,
And
there
that
we
was
go.
before, there's no COVID involved in that, Jim.
That's it. We have to take a break, Mark.
Oh, we have to take a break.
We have to take a
Okay,
break.
we're talking about the fact
We have to take a break.
that people are becoming ditzy, very
No,
ditzy.
they're not. They're suffering from brain fog, is what we call it.
Well,
or cognitive
when you
fog,
have brain
not
fog,
ditzy.
you are ditzy.
You are.
I would say, and the relationship between long COVID and young people becoming more ditzy when you're not supposed to be that ditzy when you're young is well.
Do you think you have long COVID? I think I have long COVID. I told you. You
No.
think I have long COVID?
I think you have long COVID?
No. Do you think you have long COVID?
No, I don't.
Okay, fine.
I've always been kind of like
No,
this.
I wasn't saying.
Anyway, the number to call is 877-301-8970. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan. We're live at the library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News, youtube.com/GBH News. We are not here for this Friday, the Friday after Thanksgiving. Monday, not here at the library, but Monday, we are in Brighton with the governor joining us from noon to 1 for Ask the Governor. We're talking about a story that appeared in the New York Times today. The headline says it all. More Americans say they're in a cognitive fog, and adults in their 20s, 30s, and 40s are driving the trend. You buying it? You living it? 877-301-8970.
Now, I think this is someone who is empathetic about your situation at the dentist this morning. Jim, when you were there on the wrong day. This texter says, Jim pulled off what my friends call the Irish hello, not the Irish goodbye. Something I did a few months ago when I drove my family of 5 50 minutes to our friend's house on the wrong day. I pulled into the driveway, walked right into their kitchen with all my children to find them sitting there in their pajamas.
No, that is great. I hope that's true. That is really good.
That's a really good one. And
really
somebody else says, a lot of people are forgetting this is from Lizanne in Mattapoisett, finding herself unable to keep the correct sequence of how to do things, the sequence in order.
It's the same kind of thing.
And she says she doesn't do social media or weed, so who knows?
In any case, and someone on YouTube just posted, is this 96.9 FM talk? No, it actually was 11 years ago, though, for us and our colleagues, but not anymore. 877-301-8970.
Ron and Seabrook, thank you for calling.
Hey, Ron.
Hi, nice to talk to you, and happy Thanksgiving.
To
And
you
to you,
too.
of course.
Mention it.
Thank you.
You know, I read a lot for pleasure, and I do crossword puzzles every day. For years, I've noticed that I perform better on the puzzles in relation to how much demand whatever I'm reading places on me. And it's analogous to when people back in the day might recommend that you take your car out on the highway and blast it for a while, and it'll run better afterwards. I've noticed it in myself, and I think that that's the case. A lot of people seem to be in a fog, and it's for lack of mental exercise.
Well, except then I sort of have mental exercise from 11 to 2 every day, and I still went to the dentist on the wrong day. So it sort of belies. But I do believe use it or lose it is the notion.
But I think the density, I think that what
do you
you're
mean?
reading, I mean, we're reading mostly newspaper articles, magazine articles, and trying to, remember this stuff.
I'm reading Brian Stelter's book for tomorrow.
Okay, but that's a pretty quick read.
It is a quick read.
It's not.
Yeah, that's true.
I think if you're reading something that's
It's
really
not War and Peace.
Exactly. You're trying to read. Say a Russian novel. Of course, you read a Russian novel. You have to write down the names of
Well, I
all
don't
the
speak
characters.
Russian either, is the
Well, you're
problem.
reading it in English,
sorry.
Jim.
Okay,
But you have to keep track of all the characters' names
I got
because it's so confusing. So reading something that's really a heavy lift.
So you
I
buy
think
Ron's notion.
Yes,
Ron,
I
thanks for the
absolutely
call.
buy Ron.
Well, what are you talking about? You're a huge reader, and you
not a
exercise your
huge
brain
reader.
all the time, and you don't know where you are half the time.
I don't read as much as I should because I'm so busy reading the newspaper articles and the magazines. I don't have time. But when you read something heavy duty like that, I think it does. It's kind of like trying to memorize poetry, or memorize anything.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a exercise for your brain.
Huh.
Let's go to
Do
Carol.
you do spelling bee in the New York Times?
I do Wordle and the short crossword because
We have a friend
I can do
who
it really
shall
fast.
remain unnamed who gloats about being
Queen Bee.
Queen Bee every single
Yeah.
day, and I've never been Queen Bee once.
Neither have I.
Once.
I have a friend who does the same thing. Won't get out of bed in the morning until she is
Really
the
aggravates
queen bee.
me.
I'd be there till 4 o'clock in the afternoon trying to do the same thing. Carol and Lincoln, thank you for calling.
Hello, Carol.
Hi. I swim every day in the pool, half an hour.
There you go.
And
I am 64. I have absolutely no brain fog. And I think swimming is great because you're breathing, you're sifting your thoughts, it's quiet, and you can organize your thoughts for the day.
Well, there's lots of evidence, too, that aerobic exercise, which, of course, swimming is,
It's good for what?
Your head.
it is?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
do it every day.
Well, there you go. Are you on
there I
one of those
go.
elliptical
Elliptical.
things?
I do the elliptical
Yep.
every day, yeah. Oh, go ahead, Carol. I'm sorry.
Swimming, elliptical's the same, but with swimming, you don't have to worry about hazards. So you're not like,
That's true.
especially if you're in the pool.
That's a good
You're
point.
not on the road, on your bike, you're not running, there's no noise. It's just you and your breathing.
Well, it's also you and your breathing in the chlorine, Carol. What do you do with the chlorine?
I swim in a saline pool.
Really? Where do
By
you
the way,
find this-
Zoe just made a note, Carol, and said drowning feels like a hazard. Is that not?
Hold on. Yeah. What's a saline pool?
Saline is salt.
Very few
I
people
know.
drown in the pool.
Okay, good.
But where do you
People
go?
drown in open water swimming.
That's a good
Okay.
It's in Concord at the Concord Carlisle High School.
What are you going to go there?
Saline
What do you
pool.
care?
Well,
where she
because one of the
swims?
reasons a lot of people don't like to swim in pools, including me, is the chlorine.
Yeah.
I remember when I was in college, all these big swimmers out in Stanford, you know what happened to their hair?
No.
Turned green.
Did?
Yes.
Carol,
They've
is this-
changed it a lot. They have chlorine gas now. It's not like it used to be.
Okay.
Carol,
thank you very much for the call.
We appreciate
You know who else swims every day? And
No.
she's like pushing
No.
90? Is the sculpture lady that did the Make Way for Ducklings. Nancy Shorn?
Nancy Shern.
Shern.
Excuse
Excuse me. It was,
One of the great people
yeah.
who ever lived.
Some people just don't get it. Remember we interviewed Jimmy Carter? Speaking of, we were talking yesterday about Rosalind Carter
Sure,
dying
that book about violence
at
against
96.
women.
Yeah, I mean, talk about sharp as a tack, and he was in his early 90s then, right?
Yeah. What's your point?
Well, I'm just saying that he wasn't doing social media. He didn't get COVID, and he went on indefinitely with a sharp.
By the way, after I said I've never been Queen Bee, Jamie texted,
Yeah.
which was really sweet, that I'm Queen Bee here every day.
You are Queen Bee
And then
here.
he does an AI photo of Jim Browdy. That'd be me.
Every day.
As Queen Bee. What do you
Mark-
think of that, by the way? It looks pretty
We
good.
can't, no one
doesn't
can
it?
see this but you and me, Jim.
But what do you think?
I think it
It looks like a Queen Bee. I
you look like a
Bee.
queen bee,
I do. Thank
absolutely.
you. I
Very
appreciate that.
nice.
Thank you.
Mark in the truck, thank you for
Hello,
calling.
Mark in a truck.
Well, hi, good morning, you guys.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'm here in Watertown.
Good.
Actually, just around the corner from the GBH building.
Well, that's excellent.
I'm just calling to tell all your listeners to to put down their devices and get off their computers and get out and get some fresh air and some exercise, and maybe it'll clear up. I think it's a result of too much
screen time,
too much digital activity in our
an
modern
earlier
society.
caller said the exact same thing, and I tend, with no research to back it up, but I tend to agree with you, Mark. It's too much. Mark, say hi to GBH for us. We appreciate your call.
Dave in Concord wants to know if it means anything that his brain fog seems to thicken Monday through Friday from 11 to 2.
That's a good one.
And Buster says, long COVID has been great for me. I'm kind of a dum-dum, so it's been great cover.
That's great. By the way, we're about to take a break. Before we do, Joe Biden just spoke and said we are, quote, very close to a deal on hostages. And so we will obviously update you on that as the morning goes ahead.
Yep, we are moving on. But, some of people are saying that drinking is not good for your memory either.
But people aren't drinking. I mean, people drank more during COVID, but there's no evidence that people are drinking more post-COVID, is there?
No, but it's just one of those things that things like marijuana and alcohol, if you overdo it, can lead to a big problem. Okay, coming up next, we're going to talk with Trenny Casey of NBC Sports Boston. She's going to tell us why a football sideline reporter fabricated her interviews with coaches and how young football players are suffering from CTE or brain damage caused by repeated hits playing football. You are listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Mark Dregan and Jim Browder. We're live at the library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News, youtube.com/GBH News. Obviously not here this Friday. We're back at the library next Tuesday. And on Monday in Brighton, not at the library, Governor's kind enough to join us for Ask the Governor, noon to 1. We're joined now on Zoom, though, by Trenny Casey, anchor and reporter for NBC Sports Boston. Hey, Trenny.
Hi, guys. Happy Thanksgiving.
And to you,
happy Thanksgiving to you, too, Trenny. So what is the latest on Bruins forward Milan Lucic? He was Lucic, I think it is.
Lucic?
Yeah, Lucic. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
He was arrested, alleged domestic violence, attempted to choke his wife.
Yeah, so it happened Friday night around 1 a.m. He apparently returned home after a night of partying, intoxicated. The two argued about a missing cell phone. He couldn't find his. He accused her of, this is all according to court reports from today, he was in court this morning, accused her of taking his cell phone when she turned and walked away from him. He grabbed her by her hair, pulled her back. She had red marks on her chest. She accused him of choking her. When the police went into the apartment, into their condo in the North End and the waterfront, they found a broken lamp and pieces of glass or plastic on the ground that seemed to also indicate an altercation. Lucic pleaded not guilty this morning to charges of assault and or battery to a family member. But he has been suspended indefinitely by the Bruins. And it's going to be interesting to see how they handle this, right? Lucic has been out with an injury He's on a pretty low stakes contract, $1 million. And of course, we know what happened last year with the Bruins when they kept a prospect on their team, or brought a prospect to their team who had a history of bullying and bad behavior. Do the Bruins choose to keep Lucic on their team, or do they just dismiss him? What I thought was, and guys, what I thought was interesting by the Bruins, and also I think the right move, rather than wait for the court hearing to happen, rather than wait to talk to him or figure out what took place, they suspended him immediately. So the news broke Saturday morning. And we all assumed it must have been something domestic related, because they said they were going to offer as much support to the family as they possibly could. And so I think in this instance, that's the best the team can do right now. But I think the question does remain whether or not he rejoins the Bruins at any point, or if he is unceremoniously released.
Trenny, refresh my recollection. I had forgotten about, was that guy's name Miller, the bullying guy I think
it was Mitch Miller, right?
Okay, yeah, I think so too.
Excuse me.
But my recollection, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is they basically took a while, even though he wasn't a great player.
They did.
They took a while, and then only when there was public outrage did they decide to cut the guy. Is that not right?
That is correct. I mean, when that incident happened, now this was a prospect, right? This is someone that they brought into their system, whereas Milan Lucic has, $1 million contract. He's on the active roster. He was here in 2011 when they won the Stanley Cup. Yeah. And so this one, listen, the news broke right away. Whereas the Mitchell Miller thing, they had to sort of, people had to dig again and figure out why this was a controversial signing. So I think maybe in the Bruins' minds at that point that they could maybe get away with it. Maybe people wouldn't go back and look. I also hope that this means that they learned a lesson, right? That they learned that, there's no tolerance for this kind of behavior anymore. And to their credit, they acted quickly, swiftly, and correctly this time around.
Speaking, having learned something, apparently a woman who I admit I've never heard of before until a couple days ago, Carissa Thompson she apparently hasn't learned anything. She was on Pardon My Take podcast, admitted, when I first heard this, I assume I heard wrong, admitted voluntarily, she's a sideline reporter, to making up
Where's she a sideline
reporter? What do you mean?
She works for Fox Sports and NFL on Prime Video.
But here she is.
You wonder if there's a culture like there is in the news.
I think she's the outlier.
Let's hope so.
We'll find out from Trenny. But here she is, Carissa Thompson, admitting, apparently with no hesitation, what she'd done. Here it is.
I haven't been fired for saying it, but I'll say it again. I would make up the report sometimes because the coach wouldn't come out at halftime, or it was too late. And I was like, I didn't want to screw up the report. So I was like, I'm just going to make this up because first of all, no coach is going to get mad if I say, hey, we need to stop hurting ourselves. We need to be better on third down. We need to stop turning the ball
Pressure
over.
the quarterback.
Yeah, exactly. and do a better job of getting off the field. Like, they're not going to correct me on that.
Let me just say, if Governor Healy is unable to appear on Monday, Marty and I are just going to make up what she would have said had she been there. Do you know this woman?
I do a little bit. And listen, I will say this. Carissa is known for being, and what I've always liked about her is that she doesn't put up fronts. Her and I were both interviewed for a Real Sports piece maybe 6-7 years ago, maybe even 8 years ago now. And she was very open and honest about the fact that, she gets Botox and she does things to look younger and she dresses a certain way because she understands that she needs to look good for her job. Where, I sort of represented this other side where, in my interviews, I talked more about not appeasing the people that wanted to be appeased. But I always respected Carissa for being honest about it. Like, we just took two different paths, right? In this instance, this infuriated me because it's one thing, and notice in it, she says, I haven't been fired for saying this before. So this is not the first time that she admitted to this. Her and Aaron Andrews. So I should also clarify, Carissa's no longer a sideline reporter. Carissa now hosts like the pregame show on Fox. So they have a pregame show that airs from 11 to 12 that leads into their main pregame show that James Brown hosts from 12 to 1. And she does like game updates throughout the NFL in the afternoon. And she's the host of Amazon's Thursday Night Football, Amazon Prime's Thursday Night Football package. So she is no longer a sideline reporter. But she also has a podcast with Erin Andrews, who is still a sideline reporter. And they both admitted on this podcast a couple of years ago that they had made up sideline reports. And it just really didn't gain traction, I think in large part because I just don't know how much traction their podcast gets. So I think, maybe somebody didn't listen that week or no one of any influence listened and no one heard it and grabbed it. And the Part of My Take podcast, by comparison, guys, is huge. It's like constantly the #1 listened to sports podcast, right?
Which one
and
is?
So everybody,
Which one is?
Part of My Take
Okay.
is it does unbelievable podcast numbers.
Okay.
And so everybody heard it, right? Because so many people listened to it. Then you had the audio and it took flight. What bothered me about it is, I was a sideline reporter for a long time. It never even dawned on me to make up a sideline report. I mean, I was trained in a newsroom. I was trained by news journalists. My first job was in news. So for me, if a coach wouldn't talk to me, I would just say the coach wouldn't speak to me, But I can imagine how angry he would be. You guys, they are 0 for 6 on 3rd down in this. You use that and then other information to give your sideline report. Had Carissa come out and said, yeah, when I was in my 20s, I was under so much pressure. I wasn't qualified for the job. And looking back, it was the wrong decision. I can't believe I did that. I think we'd all have a different reaction to it. But the reaction to everyone is like, it was so flippant. Like, it was no big deal. Like, I made it up, and why would anyone be upset about it? Like, she said it because she thought in her mind it wouldn't bother anyone. And I just feel bad now. Like, I know for a fact, because I text with a lot of people in this industry and I do this job, that after that happened, more than a couple sideline reporters had things said to them by coaches and players. Are you going to make this up? What I tell you, should I just not tell you?
Can I get in here for a second?
And it's terrible. Yeah, of course. Sorry.
This just is insane. You get fired for this. That's what happens when you make things up. You get fired for this. And what's really awful is you look at these really good-looking women along the sidelines, these NFL games, and you think, are these women, do they know anything about the sport, or are they just there because they're really good-looking women? And you want to give them the benefit of the doubt that they are serious people trying to do a serious job. It just hurts all women in this business. And the other thing that drives me crazy is I don't know enough about Fox Sports, but I know Fox News lies all the time. I'm going to talk to Brian Stelter tomorrow. He's got a new book about all Fox lies. You wonder if there's some culture at Fox Sports. As we know, at Fox News, women are wearing skirts. They're looking really unbelievably gorgeous all the time. If there's a culture at Fox Sports, it says it's really all about how you look, sweetheart, and not how you report, which is just so enraging.
I mean, listen, it's hard to argue that because they have not punished Carissa Thompson. And even though, somebody went back and found the podcast and listened to it and heard Erin Andrews agree, and I think say she had done it as well, from what I understand, what I read in the New York Times and The Athletic, there has been no retribution for either of them. Neither of them have faced any punishment. Obviously, Carissa said it. Fox, the head, PR person at Fox came out and said, oh, this was something she did 15 years ago. We're not going to go back and retroactively punish her. Personally, I think there should be, because it's a reflection on, it might have happened 15 years ago, but it didn't become public until now, right?
By the way, since you mentioned,
I will say
let me
this,
hold
though,
it. Wait. Let me. Since you've mentioned it a few times, we have the sound from 2022 where Carissa Thompson is talking to Erin Andrews, and here is what you've been referencing: first Carissa, and then Erin Andrews.
I'll never forget this, you guys. I was covering every Lions game because I was a baby reporter and got all the games. And it was the year that they 0-16. And Ron
awesome.
Marinelli at halftime, I was like, oh, coach, what adjustments do you need to make at halftime? He goes, that's a great perfume you're wearing. I was like, oh, I was like, this isn't going to work. I'm like, all right, I got to make up a report. I'm not kidding. I made up a report. I've
done that too for a coach that I didn't want to throw under the bus because he was telling me all the wrong stuff.
Maybe I'm naive. I am totally stunned. Erin Andrews is a really big deal, by the way.
She is still a sideline reporter.
Yeah.
And that to me is where there's it's like, how do you not discipline these two people who are, by all intents and purposes, two of the biggest female faces in all of sports. Mm-hmm. And I do want to stand up, Marjorie. You said, do you think all Fox reporters do this? I do not. I
Well,
do not.
I don't think.
I know.
I wonder if there's a
You know,
culture.
I know Laura Oakman was outraged by this.
I read
She was
that.
very outspoken. Pam Oliver was outraged by this. Jenny Taft, who does football and who is the lead U.S. men's and women's soccer team reporter. She's covered World Cups. She was outraged by this. And so what ends up happening, though, Marjorie, because of what Carissa and Aaron say, then, you know, and listen, Carissa did go on to say in the Pardon My Take, you know, I respect the job and it's really hard and lots of people, you know, do a great job and don't do what I do. But the damage is done because you did not think before you speak. And it's one thing to not think before you speak when she's talking about that era 15, 20 years ago when she was in her 20s. She's 41 years old now. You know better. You know better, and you know the damage that you can do by speaking. I get really angry about this because people skating when they shouldn't skate is just, to me, is inexcusable.
We're talking to Trenny Casey.
Okay, so let's, more and more you hear about concussions and repeated hits and the damage to young football players. Tell about this latest study involving CTE, the syndrome that comes from all those repeated hits in young players.
So this was one of the most devastating articles I've ever read. I was actually I was wiping away tears. It was visual and audio. Print and video and audio on the New York Times. If you have a chance to read it, they talked to, I believe, 4 families who lost young men between the ages of 18 and 25 or 26 to suicide, who all of those men and their families decided to donate their brains to Boston University to be looked at, researched posthumously, because all of them played football. And all of them were found between the ages of 18 and 25 to have stage 2 CTE. One of the young men, Wyatt, in the story, they actually posted a video, his last video that he took of himself begging his father, knowing it was right before he steps outside and took his own life, died by suicide, begging his father. He shot himself in the chest so that his brain would be preserved so that they could find an answer for why he was so in a deep, dark depression, such rage and such anger. And watching the video was heartbreaking to me. And the one thing that they all had in common was that they played football. And so this study that BU has been doing, I believe, and please correct me if these numbers are wrong, but off the top of my head, I believe 63% of the brains that they studied of children who, young adults, I should say, not children, young adults, and children who died by suicide, died early in life, where their brains were donated, they had CTE. A large portion of those played football. Some also played hockey and other contact sports. But football was, by and large, the largest concentration of the prevalence and the appearance of CTE. And it was gut-wrenching to watch these parents talk about how their kids loved football, and they know it was football that at least contributed to them dying. But what was also surprising to me, and again, I don't know if you guys watched the whole thing, if you had the stomach to watch it all, but at the end of the piece, they asked all of the parents whether or not they would allow their children to play football again. And one set of parents said absolutely not. Absolutely not. They would never allow a child to play football again. But all of the other sets of parents said yes. One of the fathers said no, and the mother said yes, which surprised me. The father said absolutely not, the father of Wyatt. And the mother said yes because he loved it, and she didn't want to take away something that brought him so much joy. And that part was hard for me to watch because, listen, I'm not going to judge a parent who lost a child. I don't have children. I have no idea what that would be like. But it was surprising to me. But the one thing they did, it was surprising to me that they would allow them. But the one thing that did stick out to me is that they said they would allow their children to play football, but not as early.
Yeah, that's what I wondered.
They all would have waited until their kids were like upper middle school or high school to start playing, because all of these kids started playing when they were 5 or 6 years old.
Yeah, I wondered about that, if there's any evidence, and I don't know if there is.
Yes, I can speak to it.
Yes.
Older children do better.
First of all,
Absolutely,
we should mention
yes.
the three amongst many incredible people at the Concussion Legacy Foundation.
Oh, Chris Nowinski.
People know Chris
Yep.
Nowinski, former football player at Harvard, former pro wrestler, Dr. Cantu, Dr. McKee. They are incredible souls who have changed the world. I believe, and answer your question, Marjorie, that Nowinski a few years ago on behalf of Concussion Legacy Foundation came out with recommendations exactly what you say, is there shouldn't be this level of contact at an earlier age.
Like
Start
Pee-wee
later.
football.
Because one of the things we've also learned from the Concussion Legacy Foundation, it is not just the number of concussions you have, it's the number of hits to the head that you've had, even if they're, I don't know if it's a proper word, subconcussive. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's just the constant jarring, right?
Exactly,
it's the constant moving of the brain. So it's not just smacking your head and, getting your bell rung, which is the term that we've used forever in football, which we should probably stop using, right? Like, words matter.
I agree
and when you
with
say you get your bell rung,
totally right.
It diminishes what's happening. No, what's happening is you're having a traumatic brain injury. You have a concussion. And it was hard. Again, I posted it on my Twitter. I don't post a lot on Twitter anymore because it's a cesspool. But this I did post, and I'm happy to repost it again if anyone is interested in reading it. It was gut-wrenching to read, but the video portions of it were really well done, but also very difficult. But to me, it really drove home and illustrated the push-pull of parents whose kids love football.
By the way,
and I think in some instances, there was a set of parents whose father is a coach for I believe the University of Maryland. Their son, who is still living, plays football. And so I also think it's a more complicated, like a lot of people, Jim, you ask me this all the time, like how could a parent allow their child to play football?
I do.
And I think sometimes, Jim, the more I think about this, and I listen to people around me who are obviously, many of them, football is their livelihood. They may not play football anymore, but maybe they coach football or they cover football because they're a reporter. If football is bad, then what they do is bad, right? And so I think it's very complicated to get into your brain and say to yourself, well, I'm not going to let my kid play football, but I'm going to go watch someone else's kid who's now a college student or, high school student, college student, or a professional who's been jogging their brain around for years. And I'm going to say, no way, I would never let my kid do that. But I am going to make money off your kid who does that.
Well, let me say,
so I think it's really difficult. I think it's a really difficult place to be.
Not when kids are 7. Not when kids are 7 or 8. Maybe when they're 13.
Marjorie, I agree. My sister, I think I've said this before, my sister and my brother-in-law will not allow my nephew. He's only been allowed to play flag football.
Yeah.
Which, listen, that is a perfectly suitable alternative.
It's going to be in the Olympics probably at some point.
Yeah, you do. Like, your kid does not need to smack into another 7-year-old. And the mother of the young man who died, whose father is a football coach, she said, when you're watching 6 and 7-year-olds play, you don't think they can hit each other hard enough to cause any brain damage.
Can I tell you,
so
babe,
for her was really eye-opening.
Let's hold it right there for a second. 2 things. 1, check out the Concussion Legacy Foundation to learn what they recommend. Do you remember the story? Trenny just reminded me. 6 and 7-year-olds in Massachusetts a bunch of years ago.
All the concussions.
I forget the community. One team won like 52 to nothing. And the little 6 and 7-year-olds on the nothing side, the losing team, half of them or some significant percentage had concussions as single-digit kids. And these macho tough guy coaches, talking like that's how you train these boys to become men kind of thing. So check out Concussion Legacy Foundation, and I'm with Trenny. Read the story. It's one of the most powerful ones, and look at the images and listen to these families.
It's from the New York Times, right?
The New York Times.
Yes, it's from the New York Times.
It's hard to make this transition, but we only have 30 seconds, and some people actually care about this. Is Mac Jones done, or is he starting on Sunday?
We all thought he was done, Jim. We thought that, Bill O'Brien, if not a Bill O'Brien, Bill Belichick would come out today during his press availability and say, listen, you know what? We're going to get back a couple of weeks off. We're going to go with Bailey Zappi or Will Greer or somebody else. Oh, no, they're still trying to figure out. You know why they're still trying to figure it out, Jim? Because they don't have any good quarterbacks on their roster. So when you have no good quarterbacks, you just have to figure out who's the least crummy of all of them.
Okay.
That's a good answer, Trenny Casey. It's good to see you.
Thank you so much.
Happy Thanksgiving, guys.
And to you, Trenny.
We've been speaking with Trenny Casey, anchor and reporter for NBC Sports Boston. After the noon news, we're going to be joined by Lydia Downey of the Pine Street Inn. She's going to talk about the homeless crisis in Boston, as well as Thanksgiving dinner at the Pine Street Inn and its many apartments all around Boston. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
The T says that recent shutdowns between Park Street and JFK UMass let crews speed up track replacements on that stretch of the Red Line. The work is now done, and that means that 9 slow zones have been eliminated, with trains traveling at their expected speed of 40 miles per hour. T General Manager Phil Eng says the expedited repairs are an example of a new way of doing business at the agency, with better coordination leading to faster results. Eng says there's now 10 miles of Red Line track where slow zones are still in place. In Boston, Bob C., GBH News, 89.7.
Houston Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we're streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News. Just want to remind people we're not going to be here on Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, but we'll be back both days next week. And Maura Healey, the governor, will be with us in our Brighton studios, 12 to 1 on November 27th.
Before we introduce Lindia, did you just hear Henry's newscast of the Rolling Stones?
Yeah, I thought there was a mistake.
Mick Jagger is 80.
He's 80.
He's 80. I'm going to argue against myself. If he can go on tour at 80, Joe Biden could probably be president at 81, in any case.
Yeah,
We're
he's a
joined
little
now.
bit more flexible, I would say.
Yeah, but he's got
Biden.
physically a little bit harder job, maybe not mentally a harder job. In any case, we're joined now by Lindia Downey, President and Executive Director of one of the most important organizations in our community, the Pine Street Inn. Happy Thanksgiving, and hello, Lindia.
Hello.
Hello to you.
Great to talk to you, Lindia, as always. So we're going to talk in a few minutes about the whole crisis with homelessness, but let's start with something a little bit upbeat. You have a great day over at Pine Street on Thanksgiving. Tell us what's going to go on over there.
So we'll serve Thanksgiving dinner to about 2,000 homeless folks that will be in our shelters, and we'll be helping our tenants now that have moved out of homelessness have a nice Thanksgiving day. It's about 120 turkeys, 1,000 pounds of mashed potatoes, 280 gallons of cranberry sauce, a few hundred pies, and our kitchen crew, they're cooking turkeys now. And we're helped this week by a whole lot of volunteers that are coming in to help us peel potatoes and make cranberry sauce and do all those things that it takes to get the meal on the table.
And it's part, other than at the Pine Street Inn itself, for some of these things on Thanksgiving done at the residential communities that you have ended up developing?
So, we will, in about 4 months, we'll be over 1,000 units of housing.
That is
incredible. And those
incredible.
tenants, of course, some of them for the first time in a long time, will celebrate Thanksgiving in their own housing. St. Cecilia's parish yesterday, right down the street, helped us yesterday with a couple hundred. They put together a couple hundred bags for the tenants, so they can cook their own turkey dinner.
Nice.
Feast and Fettle is doing a match for anybody who gets a delivered meal through Feast and Fettle. They're matching it with a couple of hundred.
What's Feast and Fettle?
They're a home delivery meal service.
Oh, okay.
And so they're matching it. So, the tenants, I think, will be in really good shape and have a really nice Thanksgiving, too.
By the way, Cecilia's a Zuni, right, John?
Yes, John Uni,
Who
yes.
He's great.
One of the greats.
Catholicism wouldn't have so many problems if there were more priests like him.
One of your big problems, Lindy, is how humble you are. How does that? No, you are. It's pathetic, actually, but you are who you are. How does it feel to have these people having a bag delivered so they can cook and do their Thanksgiving in their own place? I mean, it's unbelievable.
I think I have to say Thanksgiving and the time around Christmas and New Year's is the hardest time at Pine Street. People are so heartbroken. They're ashamed. They're sad that life has gone this way. They're stuck, and everybody else is going somewhere. And it is the most emotional day. Thanksgiving, frankly, more than any other day, because you just feel it. And to have St. Cecilia's, to have these volunteers, to have people show up and say, hey, we're going to try and make it better. We're not going to fix it all, but we're going to make it better. It means the world. It means the world to us, but I think it means the world to the guests, because it's a pretty lonely place to be on Thanksgiving if you don't have volunteers, and some of this grace the volunteers bring, and the sense of joy, and just, you feel like you're part of a community.
How many volunteers show up on Thanksgiving?
Well, we'll have about 70 volunteers Thanksgiving Day, but honestly, we've had volunteers. We'll have a couple hundred this week between getting the meal prepped, frankly, getting the building cleaned up and organized and looking nice and things like that.
And by the way, as we've said every single year when you're here before Thanksgiving and other times, you don't just look for volunteers on Thanksgiving and leading up to Thanksgiving. This is a 365 day kind of thing. And by the way, we'll give it to you again, but it's pinestreetin.org for volunteering, for donating, for learning. And we're talking to the head of the operation, Lydia Downing.
So we were speaking before we went on the air, Lydia, we were reading a lot about this migrant crisis when there's more people here in Massachusetts than we have spaces for them. I guess the state's going to open up, or the transportation building, 10 Park Street. But how is this impacting what you do?
So I think that there's been a lot of focus on the migrant crisis around families, but we are definitely seeing it on the individual side. Our numbers started going up in October. First couple of weeks in November, we're up 30% over November of last year, which is very significant for us after years of, pretty minimal increases and pretty steady state. We're estimating about 25% of the new people showing up are migrants, mostly single men, some single women, mostly Haiti, Venezuela. Some of them are showing up on their own. Some of them have been to the state's welcome centers and been sent our way. But there's no question it's adding to the numbers. Again, not at the same degree as on the family side, but it's absolutely having an impact.
So what does that mean? What do you just do to just try to, how does that, are your numbers controllable now in terms of the numbers of beds you have versus the number of people who need them?
So part of what is unusual about this year, we typically don't add overflow until the middle of November because that's when it starts to get cold. We started to see the numbers tick up mid-September, October. So we've already added our overflow capacity. We're 6 weeks early this year. So we've added overflow capacity. We've opened our warming center where you can come and hang for the night. It's, you can get a mat, you can get a chair. We've added some additional beds. We're literally upstairs measuring space now, in the men's inn in particular, to see if we can add some more capacity because the numbers will only grow as it gets colder. So we're very worried about it and, have not seen this. Again, pre-COVID was pretty steady. COVID was an odd time, and I don't think you can look at COVID data. But we're worried that we're seeing something post-COVID that we haven't seen in many, many years.
Lydia Downing, before we return to current events and what you're dealing with today, tomorrow, and post-Thanksgiving, we just mentioned in passing this permanent housing thing that you began to focus on a few years ago. And I realized, we know about it, a lot of listeners may not. Explain what you've been doing and how that's become a huge focus of the Pine Street Inn.
So I call this housing with support, right? It's housing for people who are low income, who have been formerly homeless. People have been homeless a very long time, many of them, at least a year, many people much longer than that. And they need some level of support to hold on to their housing. And we've been working steadily to increase the supply of that housing in the city of Boston. As I said, we're very close to 1,000 units. And the reason it matters so much for this particular group, lots of people come to Pine Street and they're gone in a couple of weeks. Something bad has happened. They just need a little bit of support, a little bit of time, and they're going to get out, right? They're going to go back to friends or families. They're going to get a second job. They'll figure it out. But there's a group that won't. And that's the group that gets stuck in homelessness, both on the street and in shelter. And so our housing targeted specifically to that group. We opened with Beacon Communities a few months ago, right around the corner here on the old YWCA, 111 units. We've got maybe 15 more units to lease up. People have moved in. They're having Thanksgiving there this year. The units are beautiful. Beacon Communities has been a fabulous partner. We can do this. We as a city have numbers that are not off the charts like San Francisco or LA or Portland. We can do this. But to do it, we have to sustain both enough shelter for people and keep enough housing moving so that we can move people out.
I know everybody's different, but thanks to you, a couple of years ago, I got to speak to a couple of people who you've been working with who had moved into some of these units in the store. Can you just share what you hear when people first see that this is theirs?
Yeah, I think, one of my favorite stories, we did a small safe haven for mentally ill folks that were mostly living outside, and we had a guy named Sam who had been homeless a very long time, and he would show up at 2 a.m. every morning at Pine Street, and he'd sleep on the floor on newspaper, never took a bed, never got treatment for schizophrenia, didn't really qualify as someone who would harm anyone or harm himself. And we opened a small safe haven, and the staff took Sam over. We hadn't even finished the building. The paint wasn't even dry. And Sam went in with all his bags, and he went up to the top floor, and he said, "Oh, I like this room. I'll take it." And staff said, "Well, you can't move in yet. We don't have any staff. We don't have anything." And Sam said, "No, this is good." And we had tried so hard to place him, and staff called me at home, and I said, "Well, let him stay the night." They went over in the morning, knocked on the door, no answer. Finally, the services crew goes over, they take the lock off, and Sam's sleeping on the floor in newspaper. All his stuff is on the bed, which is basically, his MO. And when he woke up, he said to staff, "Listen, I haven't had a good night's sleep in 20 years. He said, "I felt so safe. He said, it's amazing to feel like this." And, he lived out his life there. He passed about a year ago. But it changed everything for Sam, everything. And when I think, when people say people can't be housed, they can. Sam needed support to manage it, but, he did a lot of this himself, too.
I wanted to ask you about this. The Herald, my old newspaper, had a great story, actually, by Flint McColgan about something called the Newmarket Business Improvement District's Homeless Back to Work Program. Tell us about that.
So the Newmarket Business Association is down near Mass Cass, and Sue Sullivan runs that and has done an amazing job. And they have been hiring people from Mass Cass in the Newmarket businesses. They've hired actually a number of our guests as well from the shelter. They've hired some of our trainees from the training program. They have someone full-time now just matching people with jobs. So as people are getting sober, as people are trying to get their life together. And it started out with Sue Sullivan walking around saying to people on Mass Cass, "Do you want to help pick up some trash? Give you $10. Do you want to pick up some trash?" And people came back and said, "Yeah, we'll do it again tomorrow." What else could we do? I think this assumption that, people don't want to get better is just not true. Hard to get better. Not everybody's there, but it's a terrific program, and they have been real leaders, I think, in tackling all the issues down on Mass Cass.
Well, I want to mention one of the people in this program because it belies, I think, the assumptions that people make. One of these particular gentlemen, he lost his house during the pandemic. I think he's the worker in the program. I don't think they identify the gentleman. But in any case, he and his family, including his now fiance, lost their house during the pandemic, and then he was delivering pizzas and living out of his car until the car broke down, and then he found himself without any money, any car. He's living on the street, and then he succumbed to addiction, which, if you lost your house and your car and everything else, you could see where that could be easy to happen. But that was just someone who had a house and had a job and lost it.
Yeah, well, nobody was born at the Pine Street Inn, let's face it, right?
Yeah.
Stuff has happened to people. They've lost their housing. Sometimes it's family conflicts. We've had many people who, we've had people who've owned their housing and for whatever reason, divorce sometimes. I think people are always surprised when I say this. We have a lot of people that medically are really frail, that have lost their housing because they got sick. Not because they didn't have insurance, but because if you get really sick and you can't work in this country, you can't pay the rent or you can't pay the mortgage. And so, there's a fair amount of that too. So lots of reasons people end up with us.
Speaking of Mass and Cass, one more second. The mayor was with us, I think it was last week, and we asked her how she rated what had happened since they cleared out the encampment. Here's just a little bit of what Mayor Wu had to say to us last week.
There were 102 residents who needed housing and shelter and were connected to individualized placements. 70-some of those residents went into a low-threshold housing placement and with wraparound medical services. Another 20-some, I believe, went into a shelter placement that was appropriate, and some were reunified with family members and actually were able to access housing with their support networks elsewhere.
I mean, I think it's fair to say she was pretty positive about the after effect. Are you in the same boat?
Yeah, I think they did a good job. I think for the most part, there's a few tents creeping back up. City's on it. The police are, going out and talking to people. Our team's down there as well, and it's not quite as concentrated on Atkinson and some of the other streets. We're seeing a few pockets here and there, but I think the city did a good job. The question now is how do we sustain it?
One of the other things, we're talking to Linda Downey, who was head of the Pine Street Inn. Marjorie and I learned, I think just this morning.
About the IDs?
There's an issue that has been pending for a mere 6 years on Beacon Hill. And by the way, we trash Beacon Hill every day, including for going home for 7 weeks on vacation, including funding for these shelters is there. You have to be nice because you depend upon them to a degree. So let's set the stage here. This homeless ID thing, which I didn't even know was an issue, and well, first of all, explain why it matters to a homeless person that they have some identification, and then explain what the hell the holdup is.
Yeah, so you can't even apply for housing if you don't get an ID. So for example, if you go up to the Boston Housing Authority and you want to go meet with someone, you need an ID to get through security and upstairs. So you can't even talk to somebody without an ID. You can't apply for Social Security, you can't apply for benefits. You need an ID for almost everything. And one of the things that happens when you become homeless is you lose all those things. You lose those pieces of paper where you can verify who you were. You don't, and this comes up all the time with landlords. You know, they want a previous bill. Well, if you've been homeless for 3 years, you probably don't have your old electric bill tucked in your pocket somewhere. So no matter what, at every step, you run into this. And anything we can do to facilitate IDs for people is an absolute home run. Our staff spend a ton of time trying to get IDs for people, tracking down birth certificates, and getting people through the ID process. And plus, you got to pay for it. You know, not a lot of money, but you got to spend money to get your ID.
So what is the problem? I mean, I assume there's some issues. I don't know. You'll tell me if there are. You sit down, you figure out what the issues are, and you pass the damn law so they have an idea. 6 years. Yeah. What's the holdup?
I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know if there's other worries about, you know, other state departments or things like that. But this is one we ought to be able to facilitate.
The
The
holdup is people don't pay attention to what's going on in Beacon Hill. The legislatures don't feel a sense of urgency. They just went on vacation without figuring out the extra money for this migrant crisis, which has been all over the papers.
Or for these state workers. Did you see the demonstration
Or the state workers
yesterday?
who didn't get the money that they're already entitled to. So, you know, we all have to be more vigilant and harass our legislators to get anything done.
Okay, so we're not going to get you in trouble, but I'm just going to ask you one more question, then we'll move on. Do they call you on the phone and say, we have some issues, Linda Downey, can you come sit with us?
Don't get her in trouble.
And discuss what
No, sometimes. I mean, but I think sometimes we're very proactive up there saying, you know, this is what we think you should be doing. And look, they'll figure it out. They'll figure out this migrant piece. They will. I have full confidence. But, you know, it's winter. It's New England.
Raise your right hand.
It's New England. They have to figure it out. You know, it's getting cold. I mean, look, the winter's here. We got to deal with it. And we got to deal with it, you know, today. So, agreed. We need some movement on that. The ID bill too. That's a bit of a no-brainer. That one.
2017. I think they can get it done. Before you go, how is the general population on what you've spent your life working on? There are about 1 million nightmares that surround us everywhere you turn, including wars, democracy hanging by a thread. I would argue in this country, is protecting vulnerable people who need a break so that they too someday can help others. Is that a priority for people in 2023?
You know, I think, how do we look at this? We look at this by the level of volunteers we have, and we're doing okay on that front, post-COVID. We look at, you know, our donations are holding steady. To me, that's a sign that people care.
Just got a nice grant from the Cummings Foundation.
Yes, exactly.
I should say,
and I think there's people like Joyce and Bill Cummings who have such influence in us as a state, us as a city, and actually internationally. But I do think at the end of it, Jim, people do want to make a difference. They do want to help. They want to know how, and they want to make sure they're making a difference in a productive way. So yeah, look, we're lucky to be in Massachusetts, right? In many ways, we've been able to do some of the things that other states haven't because we've got a baseline of, you know, we're going to try and get it right. We don't always get it right, but when you hear these horrible stories, what's really encouraging is the next few days when people will be with us, helping the guests out and giving up their turkey day to be with someone else.
Well, anything that anybody can do who is of that kind of mind, go to pinestreetinn.org. Congratulations to you, all of your wonderful co-workers, and to all of your guests. We wish them a happy Thanksgiving, and to you as well, Linda.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We've been speaking
Lydia Downey.
with Lydia Downey, President and Executive Director for the Pine Street Inn. And from one good cause to another, we're going to be joined on the phone in
We
just
are
a couple of
joined.
seconds,
No, we're
right?
joined right now.
Oh, right now, by Congressman Jim McGovern. He's currently on a 43-mile walk from Springfield to Greenfield to support the March for the Food Bank of Western Massachusetts. It's led by our New England public media friend,
Monty Belmonte was here
yes.
a few months ago, yeah.
So
well, let's give the website first, marchforthefoodbank.org. Take it away, Marjorie.
Yeah, so Congressman, 43 miles. That's a long way.
It is.
What's going on?
And we're walking over the Sunderland Bridge right now, going into Deerfield. So, but you know what? It's worth all the aches and pains because it's for a good cause. And we have too many people in our community, and our state, and our country who don't know where the next meal is going to come from. And and this is about raising awareness about hunger, and about raising funds for the Food Bank of Western Massachusetts so we can combat it. This is a solvable problem, and government needs to do more, but in the meantime, we all need to pick up the slack.
We are talking to Congressman Jim McGovern. I think it's fair to say he's a masochist. He's been doing this for a decade and a half, every single year for a wonderful cause. Jim McGovern, when you tell people who don't know about it, these stunning statistics about how many people are food insecure, do people continue to be surprised by how high those numbers are?
I think they're surprised, but the numbers are so high. It's like 38 million people nationwide. But I think the number is so high that I think people are incapable of feeling what that means. They've lost their human ability to feel. So stories are important. And one of the great things about this walk is we stop at various places and we talk to people, who benefit from the food bank or the Emmer Survival Center, or, we began at the Martin Luther King Community Center in Springfield yesterday, and we learn about some of the realities that are happening in our own state. And I don't know. There are right now. We have how many people are marching with us now? We got about we got over 200 people marching with us.
That's great.
And I just got a surprise visit from Joe Kennedy, who just drove in. He's joined me for a couple of miles on this march.
Oh, great!
For several years, yeah. And he just showed up, and I'm like, "Why are you here?" And he's like, "Because I care about this issue."
This is his former colleague, Joe Kennedy III.
Former congressman, yes.
About. Say hello to Congressman Kennedy for us, Jim.
Hey, Jim and Marjorie, say hello. He says hello back.
Hi, Congressman.
Hello back. Hey, Jim McGovern, I would assume that most people who don't follow the job you have in a horrible workplace assume that everybody, that food security and related issues, hunger, are bipartisan issues. Are they?
Unfortunately, less and less so. And I don't really know why that's the case. But the programs that are aimed at helping alleviate hunger always are contested. They're always controversial. And it really is sad to me because I got my start in politics working for George McGovern, no relation, who worked very closely with Bob Dole. I mean, George McGovern, a liberal, and Bob Dole, a conservative Republican. And they joined together to reinforce our anti-hunger safety net and helped alleviate hunger in this country. In fact, in the 1970s, we were moving toward eradicating it. And then we reversed course, and now it is a major problem. And by the way, this is not just about doing what's right morally, right? Because I think food ought to be viewed as a fundamental human right. But for those who all they worry about is the deficit and the budget and healthcare costs, if we can eradicate hunger, we save money. Right? We save money, avoidable healthcare costs, lost productivity in the workplace, kids who can't learn, and in school because they don't have meals. And thankfully, Massachusetts moved in the direction of universal free school meals, and Governor Healy is going to join us later today at 4 o'clock. So, but I mean, this is no matter what your politics are, you should want to eradicate hunger. And but in Washington, everything is contentious, unfortunately, and I hope that changes soon.
Are you walking while you're talking to us? Because if you are, I'm impressed.
He sounds a little breathless. Yeah,
I am.
Yeah.
I'm walking over the Sunderland Bridge.
Okay, so you divide this up, right? 20 miles one day, 20 miles the next day. Is that how you do it?
It's 17 miles the first day. The longest day is today.
Okay, and so then you can eat a lot on Thanksgiving, I assume.
eat a lot and drink a lot, too.
Hey, Jim McGovern, before you go, is Joe Kennedy close enough to take your phone for 60 seconds?
Yes, hold on.
Let's talk to him.
Hello, Jim and Marjorie.
Joe Kennedy, how the hell are you? Good to talk to you.
I'm walking down the street with a guy dressed as Barbie pushing a shopping cart.
Doesn't get much better than that. Why are you doing this, Congressman?
Because Jim McGovern's a better human being than I'll ever be. Look, I think as you guys know, Jim's done this every year for the past 14 years. Yep. He does it over his birthday. He walks nearly 60 miles, rain or shine or snow, to raise money for a food bank to make sure that people have the ability to meet a basic need over Thanksgiving. And, you know, Jim's been a dear friend of mine for a long time, but when a friend calls and says, hey, I'm going to walk 60 miles, can you join me for like an hour or a couple hours? It's hard to say no. If you're raising money for a food bank over Thanksgiving. So, well, you know, and where else, Jim, and I got to say, I think you guys should do this podcast next year because the guy at the front of the line is transmitting with a radio transmitter and live on the radio. So you both can do this show.
Wow.
You both can do this show from the road with us next year.
I think we may accept your offer. At least one of us will there. Congressman.
Jim is volunteering me, I think, Congressman, is what's going on there.
We want to talk to you about Northern Ireland soon. We'll be in touch, but we're glad you're there.
Anytime. You know where to find me.
Thanks to you, and thank Congressman McGovern for us, and we'll talk to you soon. Be well, both of you and all the other participants.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I'm so glad. I mean, what a wonderful effort for people that are suffering.
Jim McGovern, I would argue, is the single most important voice on this issue of all 535 members of Congress, and he has been forever. And if you want to support what Jim and Congressman Kennedy are doing, and Monty Belmonte, our colleague out there, and all these other people, go to marchforthefoodbank.org.
Okay, coming up, we're going to talk with Dr. Catherine Gergen-Barnett of Boston Medical Center. We're going to talk to her about possibly masking up again at health centers as we head into winter, and also a kind of a big so what, not me attitude toward the latest COVID vaccines. Dr. Catherine Gergen-Barnett is next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming on Facebook.com/GBH News and YouTube.com/GBH News.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marge Regan, Jim Browdy. We're live at the library, streaming at Facebook.com and YouTube.com/GBH News, both of them. We're not here Friday. Obviously, it's Thanksgiving Day after. We're back next Tuesday and Friday, and Monday back in Brighton. Not here, back in Brighton. The governor, Maura Healey, joins us for an hour of Ask the Governor from 12 to 1. We're joined now by Dr. Catherine Gergen-Barnett. She's the Vice Chair of Primary Care Innovation and Transformation at Boston Medical Center and Clinical Associate Professor at BU Medical School. Doctor, it's great to see you. How are you?
Thank you very much for coming in. So let's start with a great piece you wrote, Doctor, for the Globe about Boston Medical Center's prescription for its patients. What were you talking about?
So I actually love that I came on right after Pine Street Inn and talking about, you know, hunger and its impact on our communities. And similarly, when we think about economic insecurity and jobs, we also know that it makes a huge impact in communities. And, you know, we don't necessarily think about hospitals or clinics wanting to address these things, nor having the bandwidth. But there was a group of us at Boston Medical Center. So for years, we've been screening everybody who comes in for what's called social determinants of health. And part of that is economic insecurity. And we said, well, what would it be like if we know that we have a job need here in the hospital. We know that, our healthcare system is fraying at the edges. We also know that the best way to take care of the community is with people from the community. And so we said, what if we took a pilot program where patients who express that they have no job or economic insecurity and are interested would be available or eligible for a pilot fellowship. So we started a BMC healthcare fellowship where in family medicine at BMC, where we had a group of folks who went through a training all summer, and then now they are all being hired by the hospital. It is so exciting, and it just goes to show that as much as we talk about Beacon Hill and how much healthcare is, really ossified and can't ever make any changes, we know through the pandemic a lot can be done. Where there's a will, there's a way. And B, just thinking outside of the box and how we can actually take care of the health of a whole person can happen when you work alongside administrators and you have leadership that's willing to pay it forward.
Did you say everybody who completed the program was hired?
Yes,
everybody?
Every single person. And I wrote the op-ed last week, and I really highlighted one of my, it was actually, because it was all family medicine patients, I knew a lot of them that went through it, but I highlighted the story of my patient with her permission. She was actually super excited that I was sharing her story, who, had suffered a long, difficult, traumatic life and had come actually to the healthcare system totally mistrusting us, about a decade ago, because no one would listen to her. And at that time she was, using cocaine and had just had a lot of poverty and a lot of trauma. So the fact that she's just so psyched now and so engaged in her health in the same way that I've seen when people get housing to Pine Street Inn's point.
Anybody else doing this around the country, or are you the leaders?
I have not done a full scan of everybody who's doing it around the country. I know that, we will, and we actually are doing another cohort. And I think that the more that we can show, again, there's data to show that the top 1% of earners and the bottom 1% of earners have a 15-year lifespan disparity. So if we're not talking about economic security and mobility, then honestly, I don't think we're doing our job in healthcare. And I'm not saying we can do it all, because we are seriously already underwater, but we need to be working with people who can help us creatively create impact programs for that kind of health
Can
outcome.
I quote you to you? One of the incredible things in your terrific piece in the Boston Globe, and if people want to read it, it is called Boston Medical Center's Prescription for Its Patients, a job, November 14th, by Catherine Gergen Barnett. Listen to this line. Said another way, the impact of the highest levels of poverty on life expectancy, 15 years as you just said, is greater than the impact of a lifetime of smoking, which is 10 years. I mean, that is just...
It's extraordinary.
Stunning. It's just, but that is fabulous. And by the way, Lindy was just talking about the program that you asked her about, where they're getting jobs for essentially Masson Cass alum, which is right by your hospital.
I mean, as she walked off the stage, I said, we need to talk. You know? I mean, that's a whole other place to collaborate.
Okay, we also talked to her about Thanksgiving. The holidays are coming. No one gives a damn about COVID.
Yes.
Almost nobody's getting vaccinated. Nobody's wearing a mask. How nervous are you about the next couple of weeks?
So you're pointing to data. Actually, the Kaiser Family Foundation just had a terrific data set that came out that's saying, less than 50% of adults are planning to get the COVID vaccine. 3/4 of folks who are surveyed are not worried at all about getting COVID over Thanksgiving. And, interestingly and not surprisingly, there's a Democratic-Republican shift.
What a shock.
in terms of who's getting the vaccine and who's worried.
But by the way, there are not enough Democrats either. It isn't. They're better than Republicans.
100%.
It's still pathetic.
And I will say, and this ties to I think what you also wanted to talk about with masks. So in the healthcare setting. So there are a lot of really important advances, as we know, we've made over the last 3 years. Thank goodness. I was on with you guys. I remember November of 2020, and we were talking about, how do you actually do Thanksgiving in the middle of the crisis. So I'm way less worried than I was in terms of we know that people have some sort of immunity. Lots of people have gotten it. I don't want us to take our eye off the ball. I think it's connected to hospitalizations are rising for RSV, which we can talk about a bit. Hospitalizations are rising for flu. I do think that having no sense of kind of worries me, right? Because I want to make sure, especially for those who are vulnerable, for those with disabilities, those with, low immune systems, they feel comfortable advocating for themselves, and we can do that.
Speaking of RSV, I mean, while there's plenty of COVID vaccine, and by the way, that 50% number is total BS. I don't mean it's untrue, but the fact that they say they're going to get it, only 13% or something have gotten it so far.
There's a huge delta, and who knows when it'll happen.
So the good news, though, is there's enough vaccine if you grew up and actually went and got a vaccination. We were talking to Art Kaplan the other day. While there's plenty of whatever the vaccine for RSV is for older people available, there's almost none for babies.
For infants.
So what are you doing about that?
So the landscape for RSV is also really different. So of August of this past year, we had the first opportunity for old people, babies, and pregnant people. So we've never had protection for any of those three cohorts. So to your point, people over 60 who are high risk can get two different kinds of RSV vaccine now. We know that that's a shared decision making. We're not, not everybody is kind of routinely getting it, but it's offered. There's plenty of it. The second piece that I want to talk about, which is actually really connected to what you just asked, which is vaccines for pregnant women. So there are vaccines that are available, or a Pfizer, one single vaccine that's available for women who are anywhere between 32 weeks and 36 and 7 weeks pregnant, okay? So, basically say 4 weeks within that time. A single dose, and you give it 2 weeks to kind of go into the woman's body and then go through the placenta, actually can be incredibly protective for infants, okay? If for some reason, and I have plenty of my patients who are pregnant who have had access to that and they haven't had any problem. If for some reason they haven't gotten it, or say they delivered preterm and they got it, they delivered prior to 32 weeks, or they got the shot and it was less than 2 weeks, to get the immunity, then their infant can be eligible for this monoclonal antibody. Actually, the babies who are being delivered right now in hospitals are getting it.
Yeah.
It's the kids who are, sort of up to 8 months of age and didn't just get delivered in the last couple of months that we're having a really hard time. So there's been way more demand than supply, to your point. I know that the company that is, putting out this monoclonal antibody, Sanofi, exactly, is very much raring to go and is working as hard as they can to get more.
So what happens to that third category you talked about? You're a 5-month-old kid, and you didn't get it. What do you do? What is
so you work really hard in advocating with your clinic and your hospital. I think at this point it has been every sort of clinic has been in it for themselves. I know the Department of Public Health is working hard on this, but we've had a really hard time also at Boston Medical Center. And again, this goes to young kids waiting to go in, or babies basically waiting to go in for a well child check, right? Say in the visit in the clinic, and there's RSV everywhere, and nobody's wearing a mask. And look, I totally understand why we, took masks away in the spring for healthcare facilities. I do think that we're getting to a place. I've had people who have come in and haven't even thought about their symptoms being COVID and me testing them and them having COVID who haven't been masked. So it is, it's just, maybe it's an opportunity for us just to think, while we have all of these viruses going around, just for this one intense time, what would it be like for everybody in a waiting room to wear a mask until they can go in?
Are you doing that at your place?
We are not, but I just started talking about leadership about it literally yesterday.
And is there any reason why you wouldn't do it other than the political blowback?
I don't think there's any reason.
You went to the dentist on the wrong day today. They have masks on. My dentist
Yes,
had a mask
they do.
on.
They
I was
do
at
wear
the dentist
they
at the
do
right
wear-
day.
In fact, the receptionist had a mask on too. Everybody.
If you were working in a medical office, I absolutely would. So
Someone just posted on YouTube that I'm going to go to Jim McGovern's walk next week, thinking it was then instead of
1 week
today.
early.
in any
Yeah,
case.
Jim went to the dentist on the wrong day today.
I did.
Because he has long COVID.
Sorry.
And is
I think I do have
confused.
long COVID.
Oh, well, we can talk later.
We can?
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
I wanted to talk to you though today because I get a lot of people. We were at an event, Jim and I, and a woman had a tragedy in her family with something called PANDAS, and it's an autoimmune disorder that can set in after you have an undetected or untreated strep throat.
Yes.
The reason I wanted to talk to you about it is because I don't think people know about this.
Yeah.
And they spend weeks or months or years getting told their kid has mental illness or anxiety and depression or a tic disorder or Tourette's syndrome, when what they have is an undetected strep throat.
So let me just, let me come back and kind of share a little bit about what this PANDAS is, right? So the idea is, strep is a bacteria. It's been around forever. It's super good at hiding. So it hides in our cells, and it actually starts to put on some of the disguise of some of our cells. So sometimes it takes our body a little while to find it, to start to fight it, which is fascinating. And then what happens is when the body finds the strep bacteria to fight it, it can sometimes get confused and fight your own cells. So that's anything autoimmune means, is just fighting your own cells, right? So the idea is for this PANDAS that it is fighting cells, for instance, in the brain and in the nervous system. I will say that I read that Globe piece. I will say the statistics that they listed as much as 1 in 200. I have looked at a lot of other literature which shows it's much less common than that. So you can have, so the idea is for PANDAS that you have a kid who all of a sudden, maybe you don't even know that they have strep, but they have an acute onset of psychiatric illness or tics or OCD, and that it's not being then kind of backtracked to strep. So I really worry about articles like that that may increase perhaps the prevalence to what we're actually seeing. So I actually did a little survey this morning of people who see thousands and thousands of kids with strep. Not one of them has ever seen PANDAS diagnosed. That being said, maybe we're not diagnosing it enough. So I just want to be cautious that we're not saying, that everybody with OCD or Tourette's is then, strep is responsible. A lot of this stuff is hereditary. And I worry about people setting up shops, charging a lot of money to people who don't have that money to go down a path that's not actually helpful for a child or a family.
My understanding, though, and you're the physician and I'm not, is that if you have this, you go to your primary care or your pediatrician and you get a test for titers.
Yeah.
And if you have this, your titers are going to be through the roof.
Whatever they
and well, it's the strep thing.
Well, so it's a clinical diagnosis, right? Yep. So usually it's a diagnosis sort of exclusion. Obviously, if I did if this came up and a parent came in and worried and the kid was asymptomatic, I would still do a strep test, and if a kid had a strep sore throat or a strep throat, then we would treat them just with penicillin, and apparently, the psychiatric piece would remit, right? And so Obviously, we have to do our detective work in healthcare. Just because you have an elevated titer does not mean you have an active strep. It actually could mean that you've been fighting strep at any point in your life.
Right.
So I actually think that isn't necessarily going to be the best clue for you as you walk down that path. I do appreciate that it may raise awareness. I do appreciate that physicians should actually be getting more information about it, even though it's rare, because in situations like that 20-year-old they talked about in that article, it can be life-saving. But I don't want parents or families to start saying, every case of OCD or Tourette's is connected to strep, because that is just not true.
Right.
So you know what I realized I never asked you all the years we've been working together here? Do you have a doctor show that is your favorite through the years? Is there a doctor like you watches and loved?
Gosh, that's such a great question.
So the answer is no?
The answer is no.
Not George Clooney?
You mean like a fake doctor show?
I assume they're all sort of fake doctor shows.
Yeah. I mean, I used to be really into those when I was in med school, and then I got first of all, I don't have a lot of time for TV, but second of all, I actually don't love how they all become one big love story, and then they lose track of the public health message.
That's the only part I like, actually.
They're always
has a different show.
Rendezvousing in the laundry room.
Yes, exactly.
Apparently not at BMC.
No,
so,
definitely not.
But one last substantive question. Do you know what? You ever heard the expression boomers and doomers vis-a-vis AI?
Yes.
I had never heard it until this morning. I'm listening to NPR.
Yes.
And some guys on, I think from MIT, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And they're talking about AI, which terrifies me. And I understand it's the future and we should benefit from it. And boomers and doomers, the term means, correct me if I'm wrong, doomers are people like me who say, oh my God, fake, deep fakes, everything, we're not going to be able to believe anything. Is that picture real? Is that political ad real? The boomers are those who think there's such huge positive potential. And the guy who was interviewed from MIT said, and I'm paraphrasing him, and I can't remember his name, the area in which we should be most boomer-like, not boomer-like old person, but boomer-like excited, is healthcare. Do you subscribe to that notion?
I totally agree.
Well, tell us why.
I just was speaking on a panel last week all about AI, generative AI in healthcare.
That's what he was talking about too.
And I was really speaking about it through the health equity lens, right? Because that's sort of, I always think about how can we use technology to improve the health of all folks. But also, I think in healthcare, one of the real possibilities right now is reducing administrative burden on the healthcare system, right? So if we could use technology to more accurately write our notes, to more accurately get information from patients before they walk into our door, and information back out to them, imagine what that would mean when a patient sits down. You can actually just have the human relationship again. You're not on your computer. You're not spending all that time thinking about faxes. And I mean, I cannot believe we even get faxes in healthcare, but that is how we communicate. And sometimes I get 6 of the same fax, and I'm like, and then none of another one, right? So I do actually think that AI can accelerate our progress in healthcare. Do I think that we need really strong infrastructure and strategy to ensure that people are actually getting accurate information? And do I think we need to change the model such that we are building ground up on an equity institution and not just continuing to perpetuate the disparities?
But let me say, it's not just, I understand what you're talking about, administrative nightmare that obviously reduces, in fact, one of the best doctors I ever had left the profession in great part because of the administrative burden and no time to talk to the patient. But in terms of the care itself, there's huge potential there too, no?
Absolutely. And what would it be like, I think this ideal state or possible state where, people have smartwatches, people have lots of data, right? And that data is often not compatible with what we can receive as physicians. So what would it be like if somebody had all of their data and I was able to then have my AI system kind of curate their data, and then it could be much more robust so that people actually feel like they're back in the driver's seat with their healthcare because they can drive the dialogue and not all of their data is sitting in an electronic medical record somewhere where half the time people can't even access.
Sounds good to me. So I guess I'm part boomer, part doomer.
That's right. You're in the middle.
I'm a throomer?
You're a foomer or a
whatever it
throomer.
is.
I don't know. I just made it up.
It's the nicest
You're
thing
somewhere.
anybody said to me in ages, by the way, Kath. I want you to know. It's great to see you.
Thank you very much. Hope you have a great holiday.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
We have been
Catherine Gergen
speaking
Barnett.
with Dr. Catherine Gergen Barnett, who's Vice Chair of Primary Care Innovation and Transformation at Boston Medical Center and Clinical Associate Professor at Boston University Medical School. Up next, escape rooms. An immersive puzzle and game experience gaining popularity all over the place. We're going to be joined by two proprietors of area escape rooms to tell us what the fuss is all about and why anybody wants to spend an afternoon dodging bamboo poles with their friends. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Jim Browdy. She's Marge Regan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News, youtube.com/GBH News. A reminder again, we are not here Friday, which is the usual day because of Thanksgiving. We are back at the library next Tuesday and Friday. Next Monday, back in Brighton, not here. The governor will join us for an hour of Ask the Governor. That's noon to 1 on Monday. So since Thanksgiving dinner with your insane family might feel like being trapped in a no escape room, we're joined now by the people behind Level 99 and Boxeroo, and to try to explain to us what they're all about and why escape rooms and challenge rooms and all these things are more popular than ever. We're now joined by Matt Duplessis. He's founder and CEO of Level 99 in Natick. Matt, it's great to have you. Thanks so much for being here.
Glad to be here.
Robert Myers is co-owner of something called Boxeroo in Boston. Robert, great to have you too. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you both so much for coming in. So let's start with you, Matt. Why don't you tell us what's going on at Level 99? What is it?
Sure. Level 99 is out in Natick, Mass., and our new location will open in Providence in the beginning of the year. Huge former Sears department store converted into 50 different challenge spaces. So some of them, you might be set in an ancient Aztec temple. You might be in an art museum and you've got to perform a heist. You might be walking down the balance beam gangplank through the swinging axes. And it's an open world video game that you get to be inside of as a player.
And for a certain amount of time, there's a challenge, right? A time challenge.
Yeah, the challenges for us are very short. So this is kind of an evolution on what escape rooms have been over the years. Very short. You're in a challenge for 1, 2, 3 minutes with a group of friends. It could be super physical, like a Ninja Warrior obstacle course type game. It could be really mental, like a logic puzzle that you have to solve together. And you're choosing one of these 50 different things every 5 minutes, and people will come and stay all day with us.
This is not just in Natick. This is a Natick Mall. Am I not right?
That's right. Yeah, the Sears at Natick Mall.
Oh, my God. So, Robert, you're nodding in agreement with much of what Matt was saying there. So you're doing a similar deal, or what are you doing?
No, Boxeroo is more of what you might think of as a typical escape room. We have 3 wonderful different themed rooms. an art gallery / heist, a magician's study, and a mysterious writer's cabin called The Storyteller's Secret. These are lasting up to an hour. It's going to be you and a team of 2 to 10 in some cases. And you're going to be doing multiple different challenges, all within that given theme. You're going to have to use your brains, your hands, your eyes, and of course, teamwork and good communication to complete all of the puzzles, challenges, and eventually escape or complete the story.
But you both went to MIT, right? Is this what MIT grads do these days? Like escape in challenge rooms? That's what they do, right?
The lucky ones.
Okay,
Yeah.
lucky ones.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Robert and Matt, starting with you, who does this? I mean, who is the clientele for what you're doing, and then we'll get to Matt. What's the demographic?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different demographics. We're seeing a lot of corporate team building groups coming through these days. We're seeing a lot of families, especially at Boxeroo. All of our themes are family friendly, no horror, murder, scary things like that.
That's too bad. Go ahead.
Teach their own. Teach their own.
Yeah.
But lots of family and kids and things like that. And then young adults who are looking for an experience to do instead of just something to buy.
How about you, Matt? I would assume it trends even younger because of the short time things.
The opposite, actually.
It's the opposite, really?
We're a little older.
Wow.
We're young adults, 21 to 39 is kind of our sweet spot.
Yeah.
We have a great partnership with Night Shift Brewing in Natick, 300-seat restaurant, craft beer. The whole thing is connected to the entertainment.
And so what draws, I know there's not a typical person, but think of the typical person anyway who says, I'm going to go with 8 of my friends from work, let's start with you, to level 99. What are they looking for? What are they trying to address?
Sure. First and foremost, it is a social experience. You're playing with your small group of friends. It's very kind of ice-breaking in that it's physical, it's mental, it's unexpected. There's a huge variety from room to room. So your group is going to just have to get in there and get dirty and solve it. You guys were talking about an hour ago about brain fog, right? And about the slow.
Yeah.
This is like the anti-brain fog. This is like you get to be in the zone, in the flow state, dialed in, working together, teamwork to solve a puzzle, to get through a challenge. At level 99, the challenges are very hard. And you're looping, you're trying for 2 or 3 minutes, you're probably going to fail. And you're going to try the same challenge again and strategize and say, no, Jim, you should have done this part. And Marjorie, you should have worked on this, and you learn and get better. Just like playing a level of a video game.
And how do people deal, how do people deal with failure? Is that
They
stressing
cry,
out?
Jim, they cry.
No, I'm serious. A clock ticking makes me anxious. It doesn't make your people anxious?
The clock is big and on the wall. The clock is ticking. For nowadays, everybody plays video games, right? Mm-hmm. Of a certain age, everybody younger grew up with it. This is the physical, real-world manifestation of that. And people are accustomed to, all right, I'm going to fail at the level, but I got to try again.
Okay, I think we need to put up some pictures so people can actually see.
Oh, we have
at least
pictures?
people
I
in
didn't
the
know we
studio.
had pictures.
Yeah, and we have a question from Zoe too, Jim. But which one is it? Can we put up level 99 first? Okay.
What is that?
Are those
exactly?
the bamboo poles?
No, that's you're walking down that balance beam. If you step off onto the red, the game will fail you, and those axes are swinging back and forth. You got to dodge through them as.
What are they
as
made out of?
They're foam.
They're foam. I
Yeah,
can live
yeah.
with that. And what is this thing with the orange balls or whatever they are?
Yeah, this is one of the 43 challenge rooms today where you are walking in the center of the room and either throwing or riding on those balls, hitting the bugs that light up on the walls. Again, in a small timed 3-minute sequence, can you complete the challenge before you're out of time?
I feel my life is spent in a challenge room now that I think about it. And I haven't even been there at level 99.
Okay.
So wait. Let's stay with Matt for 1 second. So if you do solve it, the puzzle, or address the challenge, what do you get? Satisfaction, or what do you get?
That's a great question. You get a couple of things. You're accumulating digital rewards as you play. So like a video game come to life, you're earning stars for each room. You can get 3 in each room. You're trying to collect the 170 something that you need to be the perfect player, which, by the way, you can't possibly do in one visit. Right now, it's about 30 hours of content to get to the highest level in all the games. So you got to come back. it remembers where you were in the game, and
I love
you
that.
pick up where you left off, just like you're.
What is the recidivism rate? Do people come back and back and back and back?
Oh yeah,
They
oh
do.
yeah,
I figured they would.
Our loyalists have been there 30 times at this point.
We're talking with Matt Duplessis, founder and CEO of Level 99 in the Natick Mall. We talk a lot about the Natick Mall.
We do.
Yeah, we do. And Robert Myers, co-owner of Boxeroo in Boston. So, Robert, you're talking about kind of a family-friendly sort of deal. So we can put up a picture of Boxeroo as well, so people here in the library can see it, and people that are watching on YouTube or Facebook can see it. But give me an example. Like, if you go in like with mom and dad and the 2 kids, and they're going to do, I don't know, the art heist or the writer's
Here's
room.
one. What's this thing?
Yeah.
Why don't we just describe what this picture is? What are they doing there?
That is actually from a game night that we were doing with our staff in our reception room back in the day.
What are they doing?
It is a board game called Captain Sonar. This isn't typically what we would normally do, but it's a great example of the kind of skills you need to play in one of our escape rooms. Communication, teamwork, being able to work on different activities at once and communicate what you're doing to the people working elsewhere.
Okay.
By the way, if you lose, what, do you get locked in the vault overnight, or what happens?
You joke about that. One of our very first escape room, the Mystery of the Magician Study, actually takes place inside that old bank vault.
How big is the bank vault?
Big enough, but
it's beautiful. Actually, it's really beautiful.
It's a beautiful safe door right there. You actually enter through the old giant 20-ton steel door to get into the space.
Is this
okay? So let's get back to the family in the room.
Yes.
Give us how it works for them. If I pick one, writer's room or bank or art museum.
We'll stick
heist.
with the magic room as I was just talking about. You're going to go in, you start in a study, and unlike the time pressure of Level 99, this is you have an hour to complete everything. So there's plenty of stuff to do. We try not to put a clock in a very obvious place to reduce the stress there and let people actually get into the moment, into the zone. So you're looking around, you're finding like hidden notes from this magician who disappeared, and you have to figure out what his secret was. You're finding locks on his suitcases and belongings and discovering the codes to unlock those to find the next relics to do. That sort
And
of
are
thing.
they virtual or are they physical?
These are all fully physical.
They're
You're
physical.
doing them in person,
Okay.
in the space, as a group.
So the family wants to figure out within the hour what happened to the magician.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay. And is it the same thing where if they don't make it, they can go out and get a cheeseburger or something and come back and try again with a better strategy?
We tend to find that more groups will make it or make it most of the way there. Again, you have an hour to complete all
Yep.
of the challenges,
Okay.
and we have a staff member watching as you're going. If we start to see, mom and dad fighting or the kids are, just really not into it, we have ways to give hints and get people back on track and more into the experience and keep it moving for them.
So Zoe, our staff
Matt
member.
do you want to say something about that?
Yeah, it was just what you're hearing there, Marjorie, is an evolution on what escape rooms were and are becoming, right?
Yes.
It really kind of started 15 years ago or so with a classic, you're locked in a room for 60 minutes, you've got to solve a puzzle to unlock a padlock to get out of a pine, get a clue out of a pine box. And Boxeroo is an example of an evolution where the quality of the set, the quality of the story is farther. Level 99, you wouldn't call an escape room now. It's challenge room or is maybe a better example because it's a different style of play. It's much larger. So you're seeing kind of an evolution of the concept over the years.
And the challenge is, in your case, Level 99 next to the brewery. We'd be doing it maybe with a couple of brewskis. Okay,
sure.
so our colleague Zoe wants to know how this does not devolve into the movie Saw.
Oh, boy. If I had a nickel for every time I've heard that.
We're very original here.
If
at
it's a
Boston
bunch of
Public Radio.
young guys, which, and I assume they're more young guys than young women. Am I wrong about that, Matt?
We're slightly more female.
Is that true?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. And so, that really. What do you make of that?
Well, it's super social experience, a big mental as well as physical component, and we see that very mixed groups coming through.
And do people use it? You both mentioned, a family comes, a corporate group comes for whatever that's called, the corporate bonding kind of
Or
deal.
Friday night
We've
with
done
your
But wait a
buddies.
second, what if you want to meet somebody? What if it turns out you want to come to this thing, and I only want to come with one person in the hopes, can you get paired or grouped with other, like when you're going to play golf, which I don't do either?
You can mix and match your group. So you're playing all of the challenges in a group of 2 to 6, and you can change that all day as you're playing. Most people are staying with their friends. They're coming with the people they came with.
What's your favorite challenge? Give us an extreme challenge, the most challenging challenge.
Oh, golly.
Can you do that for us?
That's like picking a favorite child.
Well, pick anyone you want. It's okay. Who's your favorite child?
No, I'm not going to do it.
You're not going to do that. Okay, what's your favorite
I'll give
challenge?
you one of my favorites. You talked about, kind of, there's a ninja training room, and the center console is spinning around. There's poles poking out, and you have to dodge these spinning poles as you're pressing buttons and leaping around the room. Ton of fun.
So wait a second, wait. So if I went to that room, I'd be in the ER like in 5
That's
minutes.
right.
Is that?
That's what I was going to say.
Oh, go
I
ahead.
mean, if you look in there and you see some people must like freak out. They get really pressurized and can't take it. So you run in there and calm them down, or what do you do?
It's not scary.
It's not?
No,
they're not.
And it's very forgiving in that any one of those rooms you could fail in 30 seconds. Happens for most people. Fine, go pick another one. And
Okay.
There's a huge variety within the space, such that there's indications on the entrance of each room what type of challenge is inside. So if you're really into the physical, go. We've had the gymnastics team from BU show up a couple of weeks ago.
Oh my gosh!
And those guys were like doing backflips in there.
Oh,
They're all over the place. And the other end of the spectrum is into the mental games.
Can
That's
we
great.
talk about the sociological? I am of the belief. I don't know. I assume business is booming. Is business good? Both of you guys.
Business
You're
is
both
good.
nodding.
Yes.
I would assume that this escape and challenge thing is so huge right now as an escape, that the world is so miserable, every part of it, that people just want this kind. I hate to keep escapism kind of thing. I mean, is that is the horrible state of the world helping what you do for a living, Matt?
I mean, I hate
we
to
don't
think
want it
about
to be
the
horrible, but I mean, really.
People are absolutely looking for a release, looking for something fun, want to get out and forget where they parked their car in the parking lot at the Natick Mall and completely absorb themselves in a different time, a different place, use their mind, use their body in a way that's really engaging. It's the opposite of sitting on the couch and twiddling your thumbs on your phone all day. On a digital experience, this is bringing it into reality and letting you be the hero in the game yourself, physically active, get your butt up off the couch.
Robert, do you agree with that particularly right now in this incredibly stressful time for almost everybody, what you do is even more appealing?
I mean, I hate to say it, but yes.
Yeah.
People are looking for something to do for an hour, 2 hours.
Yeah.
Get off the phone, stop doom scrolling, and just do something with other people, and they actually engage and connect with them.
So how much does this cost?
At Boxer, it depends. We say it starts at $45 for a group of 2 and goes down as you add more, and that's for a 60-minute experience. So
Wow, so that's not
bad
that
at all,
bad.
actually.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
How about your deal, Matt?
We're $29.99 for 2 hours, or $39.99 for 4 hours.
Wow.
Or some people will stay all day and make a Disney World trip out of it.
So were you guys big nerds when you were kids, or what? What were you
We're
like,
still big
Matt?
nerds, Jim. We're still big nerds.
When you were little, growing up to be the head of Level 9, what were you like as a kid to develop into?
I'm sure if you ask my mother, I was a special child.
You were?
That's my guess. Yeah.
And how would your mother describe you if she was right here now, as a little boy, little Maddie?
I was very curious. I loved to learn new things and explore things and play games, yeah.
How about little Robert?
I'm just thinking that I literally was unloading my childhood Legos into my new place here because my parents finally cleaned out the
Is that a
basement.
true story? Or is
Yes,
that,
absolutely. And so it's like, always wanted to build and tinker and combine things in an interesting way.
Where are you in Boston, by the way?
Boxer is located at Government Center. We're literally at 55 Court Street. If you know the steaming tea kettle, our right next to that, you can't miss our reception room now.
Oh my gosh.
Great. And the Natick Mall, we talk about the Natick Mall. Our favorite story, I want to know if you know this, our favorite story about the Natick Mall was the wealthy couple that moved their 40-year-old son, who couldn't get a date, into the condos above the Natick Mall so that he could take the elevator right into I believe it was the women's section of either Lord & Taylor or something. Do you know of this story or do you not?
I haven't heard this
You ever
story.
met him? Do you know if you've never met
Yeah,
this?
we don't know if he ever got a date or
50
not.
now.
I don't know. It was a struggle. Okay. Well, it does sound like fun.
This is really,
yeah.
I think it's exciting too. I mean, it's pretty incredible stuff. Wait a second. Here is Micah from Newton. I am a 16-year-old, this is a text. I'm a 16-year-old who is a fan of Level 99 and Boxeroo. They're just so engaging. When I'm at the venues, I never check my phone once. I completely forget all about my phone. Both your places, if you're under 18, you got to have a parent do something like say. But a 16-year-old, obviously his kid went. A 16-year-old can go, right?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Fabulous. What's the website for your joint, Matt?
Level99.com.
Well, that makes sense. And how about Boxeroo?
Boxeroo.me.
Fabulous.
Well, thank you very much,
Good
gentlemen,
luck with
for
your
coming
businesses,
in. We really
gentlemen.
appreciate it. We've been
Thank
speaking
you.
with Mac
Are
Duplessis.
you open the day after Thanksgiving? Because people are going to need it.
We are.
Okay, great.
Absolutely.
Okay. Matt is founder and CEO of Level 99, which is in Natick at the mall there, and Robert Myers is co-owner of Boxeroo in Boston. It's right down by Government Center.
And
thanks
Level
to you
99
both.
in Providence, when did you say?
End of January.
End of January.
Wow,
Okay,
so
great.
it's spreading across the country. John.
Apparently it is, at
Spreading
least the
across
East
the country.
Coast, yes.
Okay, coming up, CNN's John King is going to talk to us about Biden's big problems with young voters and a bunch of other political news. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, broadcasting from the Boston Public Library and streaming on Facebook.com/GBH News and YouTube.com/GBH News.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Brady and Marjorie. And someone just said they love the Jim sandwich at the Newsfeed Cafe. You know what I'm having for lunch,
The
Marjorie?
Marjorie
The
sandwich.
Marjorie
which
sandwich.
is, of course, superior.
It's fabulous. Well, it may be, but they're both terrific. We're live at the library, obviously, streaming at Facebook.com/GBH News, YouTube.com/GBH News. Not here this Friday, back next Tuesday and Friday, and Monday, not here, but in Brighton. Governor Healy joins us for an hour in studio of Ask the Governor, 12 to 1. We're joined now on Zoom by John King. John is CNN's chief national correspondent and face of the terrific reporting project All Over the Map. Hi, John.
How are you? Happy Tuesday from New York.
And to you.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us, John. So before we get to a lot of other political news, including what you've been doing out there in Michigan, we've been watching all day the latest updates on what's going on with the hostage deal, which is supposedly imminent. There'll be some exchange of hostages for some Hamas, from some Palestinian prisoners. What do we know?
Well, the word that we keep hearing is imminent, although we've been hearing that word for several hours.
Yeah.
We do know the Israeli War Cabinet is meeting right now. There's some opposition from some of the more conservative members of Prime Minister Netanyahu's cabinet. They do not think it's worth the pause in the military campaign. They're worried that Hamas will use that pause to resupply, restock, regroup. But all of the sources I'm seeing, I have a TV in front of me here, I'm sure you do too, and I'm watching notes coming in from our international team, is that the expectation both from the Hamas side and the Israeli side, and certainly at the Biden White House, is that this is about to happen. Until you see it happen, it's horrible for the families, right? It's horrible for the families who've been waiting and waiting, 45, 46 days now. Until you see it, there's always something that can throw a hitch into these things. But the fact that everybody is talking publicly about how they think it's going to happen leads you to have some optimism.
John, I want to play a little sound when you travel to Michigan to hear college students' opinions of President Biden since the start of the war between Israel and Hamas. Here's a clip. First you'll hear John, and then you'll hear a student by the name of Ibrahim.
Rizal and his friends say a president they supported in 2020 is now greenlighting an Israeli response they see as indiscriminate.
And I don't think our country should fund that type of reaction. I feel as though President Biden doesn't value my life as a Muslim American as much as he values other lives.
From what I understand, John, politically, Joe Biden is in a pretty tough space. My understanding, and I know you'll correct me if I'm wrong, is that young voters who likely should be Biden supporters, like Ibrahim, are dissatisfied with his response, but the American people as a whole support Israel in this nightmare over there. So one, is that accurate? And two, How does he get out of this box?
He has to hope, Jim, that when we're having this conversation 3 months, 6 months, 9 months from now, that it's a different situation on the ground in Gaza, that somehow there is a resolution that has the Palestinian people moving back to their homes, and hopefully you see humanitarian aid running in. How does that happen if Hamas is still in the picture? I can't answer that question. I've been covering this issue for more than 3 decades, and that's always the problem. Does the terror stay? But to the president's politics here, look, you go to a college campus, there's already concerns about the president's age. There's not a rush to Donald Trump by any means, but a lot of young voters saying the president's, he's older than us, he's disconnected from us, he doesn't understand us. Now you see on the progressive side of that, just outright hostility toward the Israeli response and a lot of questions and anger at President Biden. So if you take a state like Michigan, again, the election's in 349 days, but if it were tomorrow, number one, let's say some of those young people stay home, or we talked to a number of young people who say they would look at maybe looking at a third party option. That would hurt the president. Then you have a giant Arab American population in Dearborn, Michigan, elsewhere in Michigan, more than 200,000 Muslims. They overwhelmingly supported President Biden over Donald Trump in 2020. Right now, the front page of the Arab American News in Dearborn, Michigan says abandon Biden. And so again, we will see what happens over the next 300 plus days when people get into early voting and then the election. But we talked a couple of weeks ago about black voters in Milwaukee. Now young voters on campus, Arab American voters, Muslim voters in America. Key pieces of the president's coalition right now are either mad at him, looking elsewhere, and it's a problem. Again, it's November 2023, not 2024. But the president has problems. And this crisis, he thinks he's doing the right thing. It's always difficult to be the commander in chief as you bump up to an election year. But he's managing this crisis, whether you agree or support with him. The calendar is what it is. And in the Democratic family, this is quite controversial.
Well, you know, I always wonder when you talk about abandon Biden and particularly the young man you interviewed was Palestinian young man, I believe, that I saw last night. What do they think that the other candidates, Robert F. Kennedy is going to do for them, or Trump is going to do for them, or Cornel West, or anybody else? I mean, do they abandon Biden and just stay home, or do they think that there's some greener pasture?
I think you raised the key question, Marjorie, that if the election were tomorrow or were next week, would the conversation be more nuanced? Would it be more detailed? Would it be a contrast, not just I'm mad at Joe Biden and right now I cannot support him?
Yeah.
Because that's what you get right now. They're mad at him right now and they just cannot see themselves, checking that box for pulling that lever right now. But you do make a key point because Donald Trump says, we could let Benjamin Netanyahu or we'd let Joe Biden and Donald Trump debate this if they ever get on a stage together. But, Trump says he's a better friend of Israel. Trump says he would be even stronger for Israel than Biden. And so I do think when you get to the question for me is more, do they stay home? Biden won Michigan by about 160,000 votes last time. It was actually more comfortable than we thought it would be. Hillary Clinton just lost Michigan. So does the president have a little bit of a cushion? Maybe, but he's the incumbent president. Michigan's just an interesting laboratory right now. You have these Arab Americans, you have these auto workers who just cut their deal, agreed on their contract to go back to work. You have young people. Right now, any smart Democrat in Michigan tells you the president's in rough shape. Right now is not the election. So you do make a key point. When you get closer to the election, then it's not just, do I pick somebody else or do I stay home? You have more of a contrast.
I want to get back to Trump and Biden in a second, John, but speaking about your reporting on this, I think I saw your first on-air report of your new project. I think it was the first with Aaron Burnett a week or so ago, and whether it was or not, it was terrific and really comprehensive and really interesting. Tell people who don't know what you're doing through this election cycle, what you've taken on.
So we have 2 different projects, and we'll probably add a few more. I'm just really excited, Jim, to be out and being on the road. And so but the All Over the Map segments are launching on Anderson Cooper's show. Those are voters. We're looking at the campaign 2024 through the eyes and the experiences of key voters in key places. And so it was young voters on college campuses now. We were in the suburbs in Virginia right before the elections there. We did Republican voters in Iowa and in New Hampshire, and we're going to keep building voter groups. And then on Aaron Burnett's show out front, we're doing what's called the battlegrounds. Some of it is some overlap, but taking a more detailed look. The first segment was on the evolution of the suburbs. When I was covering Michael Dukakis, as a 24-year-old kid covering Michael Dukakis, the suburbs were reliably Republican then. Remember the Willie Horton ads, remember the crime ads, remember the Boston Harbor ads. George W. Bush were elected on the support of America's suburbs. Those suburbs are now increasingly Democratic, and education is the big dividing line. How diverse is your suburb? How much do the people make? what percentage of them have at least a bachelor's degree or a higher thing. That is the big dividing line. And what used to be reliably red in places like Virginia, outside of Philadelphia, outside of Cleveland, are more and more becoming blue. And that is the flip in American politics. The other side for the Democrats is that Michael Dukakis won West Virginia. Blue-collar voters who used to vote reliably Democratic are now voting Republican. So for me, exploring these trends and trying to figure out what's the next one, what is the next big shift, is part of the fascinating work I'm going to do on Aaron's show.
By the way, your first presidential campaign, I happen to know, was Dukakis-Benston. And we've mentioned before the Cub reporter who broke the news that Lloyd Benston was the choice was the Cub reporter, John King, working for AP at the time. Do you know that Mike Dukakis, the great Mike Dukakis, just turned 90 a week or so ago, John?
That's remarkable. Maybe he should jump in the Democratic primary, right? So it's crowded there.
Can I tell you, I hosted a fundraiser a year or two, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, where Dukakis and his wife were the honorees, and he gave an impromptu 40-minute speech with no notes.
Yeah.
That was as fiery and substantive and inspiring as anything I've heard from any politician. And he was probably 86 at the time. It was just,
as you know, I don't get to pick sides. I like to watch and study, but he's a very decent, honest human being and a great public servant. In that campaign, I think he would say he did not think the attacks from the Bush campaign would be effective against him, so he kind of let them go, and he learned, yes, they were.
Well, you know, I guess a politician in a similar mode in that regard is Jimmy Carter, who just lost his wife Rosalind at 96 years old. I think Carter's 99. We had him on the radio. Couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 years ago.
He was young 90s.
And another guy who you worry about a little bit because of his age. He was totally engaging, compos mentis and all that, but he's also somebody who wasn't a great politician, but I think people would generally agree, a very decent guy.
And certainly the Carters, both of the Carters, and it's sad to lose the First Lady, Rosalind Carter, a remarkable post-presidency, giving back.
Yeah.
Habitat for Humanity, the Carter Center in Atlanta, travels around the world to try to help mediate and broker and bring peace and bring clean water and bring housing to people around the world. It's funny, the former presidents have this weird relationship with Jimmy Carter. They always had, because he's just sort of a loner and he's different. But if you just look at the legacy of what he has done, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, an independent or whatever, talk about somebody who took public service seriously, only a one-term president, but then still kept at it the rest of his life. What can I do to help?
So
you said not a very good politician. He was elected president of the United States.
He was elected president of the United States.
Pretty good.
Well, but I think a lot of people thought, correct me if I'm wrong, it was an honest peanut farmer as opposed to the guy who was before him, which is Richard Nixon, who of course had to run around the country saying, I'm not a crook. So I think it's one of those yin-yang things that we see a lot in presidential transitions.
He caught the wave.
Yeah,
You know, John,
exactly.
if we can return to the current horrible state of affairs, you have always cautioned us every time we mention a poll since we first met you, that it's a moment in time, particularly 300 and whatever you said a minute ago, days out. But I was watching your station last night, and I'm going to get the number wrong, but you probably know it. The host, whoever it was, I was a little groggy at this point, was talking about the fact that at this stage in the 2016 race, Donald Trump was not ahead in any national poll. And in 2023, I think the number was he's been ahead in 17 polls or some such number. And while the host, whoever it was, mentioned it's within the margin of error, so you never know, that's a dramatic shift from 7 or I guess 8 years ago. How seriously, even a year out, should we take that trend, for lack of a better expression?
Oh, Trump is remarkably resiliently strong, especially given all of his legal troubles and given the controversies when he was in office at the end of his presidency in the COVID year, ingesting bleach and so on, attacking science, so on and so forth. January 6th continues to deny the facts and the simple math of the election. And yet, if the election were tomorrow, he would win. He would win. All of the data tells you that. If the election were tomorrow, Donald Trump would win. What I would say is it tells you more about President Biden than it does about Donald Trump. President Biden is the incumbent president. At this point, voters are looking at this as a referendum on Biden. Biden's challenge is to make it a choice between him and the Republican nominee. Today, it looks like that will be Donald Trump. We will see if that's where we end up. But right now, the American people exhausted, still from COVID, then from inflation. It's deeper than inflation. There's this nagging sense as I travel, Jim and Marjorie, that people just don't know where the economy's going. They don't know where to look. Where's the North Star? My 12-year-old is sitting behind me. He came up to New York with me. What do I tell him to learn in college? Does he even go to college? Is there something else to do? What about China? What about all this fighting, now Israel, Hamas added to it, around the world? The uncertainty, both economically and I think geopolitically, if that's the right word, strategically, just has people nervous and anxious and exhausted. And from the reporting I'm getting, when you talk to people, they do not see President Biden. They don't see him as active. They don't see him as visible. They don't see him as with vitality, explaining where are we and where are we going. And so they're confused.
So is there any chance that he might decide between now and 2024 that to get out?
There are people who pose that question all the time. And, I haven't had an opportunity to speak to Joe Biden as president. I spoke to him many times before he became president. I have not spoken to him as president of the United States. But I do know from him and people around him, he's a very proud, stubborn man. It took him 3 runs to get the presidency. He still believes in his mind that he is the person who can frame the debate against Trump. He thinks it will be Trump. So as of today, the answer to that question is, Marjorie, there is zero evidence that he is serious about it.
Yeah.
The one Jim just made it. The one point I make every Tuesday is let's take this one day at a time, because there's just so much bubbling around us in the world, and B, even forget the last 6 months or the last 6 days. We just have lived in the last decade or two have been incredibly volatile, and the pace of change is so much faster because of technology and globalization and social media and everything else. So let's just take it one day at a time. But as of today, is there any evidence he's thinking about it? No, absolutely not.
So I know, my apologies for repeating a question. Margie's going to get angry at me that I've probably asked you 100 times. I really don't get this. In retrospect, I get 2016. And I'm sure we've told you the same story we've told our listeners 1,000 times. When we were in New Hampshire for the week before the New Hampshire primary in 2016, we'd ask undecided voters, a lot of them, who they were deciding between. And almost everyone said Bernie Sanders or Donald Trump, because it was the populist thing. But we know Donald Trump now. We know that in a civil case, he was found to sexually have abused E. Jean Carroll. We know that he's been charged with 91 felonies. We know he's a tax fraud. I could go down and down the list. Marjorie's thesis, and if I'm misstating what you're saying, is, Jim, you assume the average person, the Fox News viewer, for example, even knows these things.
Or that they think, they buy his line that it's a witch hunt and everybody's out to get him.
So who's right? Well, forget who's right. What is the allure of Donald Trump to a plurality of voters in 2023, despite this just the beginning of the list of his sins?
So I think you have to take the pie and slice it up. There's his core piece of the pie, which is 30-something% of the American people, which most of whom still believe he won the 2020 election, who do believe that the prosecutors are after him. So that gets him to 30-something%. Then there are other Republicans who hold their nose. But remember, lower taxes, less regulation, talk at least of being tough on the border. Trump didn't turn out to be, he did build some of the wall, but not much of it, but at least the talk of being tougher on the border. On the issues, Republicans who will hold their nose and vote for Trump because he's a Republican and because he's not Joe Biden. And then you need a little bit more to win, right? That gets you to 40-something. You need a little bit more to win, although you can remember he won the presidency by losing the popular vote just with an electoral college majority. The one thing I'm finding is that there are a number of people out there, and we'll see if this changes when there's an actual contrast. When you have ads being spent, here's one, here's the other. But people have sort of forgotten COVID and have these fond memories of the Trump economy. You run into independents, you run into people who maybe voted for Trump and then voted for Biden, who are thinking, well, but the economy was better under Trump. And they're kind of shoving aside all the other stuff. They're trying to find what they want. They want some hope about something. And so we try too hard sometimes. Individual voters sometimes say, I want this. And if I can get this, I'll ignore everything else. And so I think there's some nostalgia for the better economy of the early days of the Trump presidency, pre-COVID, that is giving him a little bit more of the slice here. And then there's just dissatisfaction with Biden, people who simply look at him and don't think he's up to the job. Trump's not that much younger, but if you look at all the polling data, and if you talk to people in my travels, they see Trump as more energetic and more vital, with more vitality, and they don't see that in the current president.
Okay, let's end with the most difficult question at all for a person like John King. Do you want to see the Patriots lose all the rest of their games? Yes or no?
No, absolutely not.
Yes, you do.
No, I want to win. I'm not a draft. I'm not a tank. I'm not a tank draft guy. I can't do it. There's too much competitive in my blood. My son is waving behind me saying they should tank and get the draft pick.
Why are you in New York, by the way, with your kid? Do you mind? What's going on? What are you doing?
The pieces, the map pieces all roll out on Anderson's show. So I come up here to be in the studio with him if I can be. And because my son's going away for a few days for Thanksgiving with his mom, I just want to hang with him a little bit.
Tell your kid we hope to meet him at some point. He's got a pretty good dad.
We should ask John King, too.
Real quick.
Here he comes. He's coming over here to say hello.
God.
Oh, my goodness. There's John King.
Oh, my God. Hey there.
Great.
That's Jonah.
Hey, Jonah.
Has Jonah got red hair?
It's blondish hair, Marjorie. This is what I look like. When I was 12 years old, this is what I looked like.
I love it.
Hey, Jonah, we love your dad, and we're pretty fond of your mom, too. It's great to meet you. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Have a great Thanksgiving to both of you.
Happy Thanksgiving, John and Jonah. It's great to see you both.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Take care.
Thank you very much for joining us. It was a thrill. He's adorable. Adorable kid.
What, John or Jonah?
Well, they're both adorable.
Okay,
they're both
He's
adorable.
way more adorable.
Okay. Thank you
See
very
John.
much, John King. We've been speaking
Have
with
a great
John King.
Thanksgiving, everybody.
You too. John King, CNN Chief National Correspondent and face of the reporting project all over the map.
By the way, you learn, in all seriousness, you learn so much. I've only seen the one he did on Aaron Burnett, the battleground thing about suburban voters. I learned so much that I think is of huge value. It was great.
And it's also great to listen to people whose political ideas are diametrically opposed to yours and listen to them explain themselves. And a lot of them, they just are living in a different...
Well, John is wonderfully respectful of everybody. I mean, when you go have him talk to somebody who probably hates CNN, he's just a really respectful, great reporter. So, in any case, what's up?
Up next, we're going to open the lines. This is a special pre-Thanksgiving edition of Am I the A-Hole?
Oh, that's exciting.
Yes, because we're not going to be here on Thursday.
No, we're not.
So here's today's premise. If you have guests traveling from faraway lands, should you go to the airport to pick them up? Are they jerks for asking you to go through the 7 levels of hell to get to Logan Airport arrivals on the busiest travel day of the year? Or are you the jerk for not taking 3 hours out of your life to go get them at the curb? You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Mark Regan, Jim Browdy, live at the library, streaming at facebook.com and youtube.com/CBH News. Not here Friday, obviously. Back next week. Ask the Governor is Monday in Brighton, not at the library. Monday, 12 to 1. Maura Healey takes your questions and ours. So since we aren't broadcasting on Thursday, we wanted to preserve our favorite weekly segment, Am I the A-Hole? So we're bringing you, I guess you could say, a Thanksgiving-themed A-Hole, or at least Am I the A-Hole, to you today. The topic, as Marjorie said, airport pickups. For the traveler, an airport pickup can feel like magic, the Wall Street Journal writes, but the picker-upper has just gone through near biblical levels of stress to whisk you away, parting the Red Sea of holiday traffic and white-knuckling past those notoriously power-mad stadies screaming at them. Even though I have to say at Logan, the state troopers are a little bit better than they used to be.
Are they really?
A little bit, yeah. So who's the Terminal C is the worst. So who's the A-hole this Thanksgiving? The traveler who demands or expects their host to pick him up from the airport despite the nightmare traffic, or a host who simply refuses and says to the traveler, who may not even know the town at all, take a cab or a ride share. 877-301-8897. Who's the a-hole, Marjorie?
Well, we're going to start out with a text from our buddy Trenny Kuznarek.
Oh, what'd she say?
Trenny Casey, I should say.
Yeah, what'd
Trenny
she
Casey.
say?
Tell those lazy, cheap visitors to rent a car like we do when we go to Wisconsin, or at least get an Uber. Am I channeling this to my own sheep family? Yep.
Beautifully put, Trenny. Thank you.
But
so
you know
where
what?
are you on this?
Well, listen, I live 15 minutes from Logan thanks to the Big Dig. And even the stress now is they won't let you park. So you're circling around the airport and circling around the airport. So I would say if you have to go to Logan, get an Uber, get a taxi, something like that. Plus, to get to Logan, if you're far away, you have to come down to the Mass Pike and back in the Mass Pike and Thanksgiving, or up 93. You'll be there forever. Now, if you have lucky enough to go to Greene Airport outside of Providence in Warwick, Rhode Island, that is a dream. You could drive down there, no hassle, pick somebody up.
That's the most convoluted answer I ever heard.
Well, I would say if your family's coming in from Logan, unless they're elderly and have problems, because you have to go walk a while to get an Uber or a Lyft, and you have to stand in line a long time for a taxi. Unless they're people that have some kind of difficulty walking and carrying their bags, let them take a cab or an Uber.
Can I quote my favorite politician? He doesn't say this anymore, but he used to say it. That would be Donald Trump. Wrong. What happened to wrong? Remember when he said wrong all the time like a moron? Do you remember that? Wrong?
Yeah.
In any case, and the reason it's wrong is because most people who visit you, they may not know the community, right? And I understand the traffic's horrible. I hate traffic too. There is nothing worse these days than flying. Would you agree?
I haven't flown since before the pandemic.
You're cramped into your seat. You're treated like crap. They give you a half a bag of peanuts. You get to a city you don't know, and then you got to walk. And by the way, forget walk to get the ride share or the cab. The signs are so atrocious, you don't even know where the ride share.
I could never find it.
Exactly my point.
So you
the
think
answer
people should
is
get picked up?
Man, woman up, and go pick up the damn visitors.
Okay, the family waiting at home, they've planned the Thanksgiving menu. They've gone to the store to buy all the fixins for the Thanksgiving menu. They've hauled out the folding chairs. They have peeled the potatoes.
What's your point?
I'm just saying, and procured the pumpkin pie. And then, as this Wall Street Journal says, I do have the right newspaper this time, it's the Wall Street Journal, they have to brave the airport's
yes, exactly.
Well, I don't think so. I think you can get in the damn cab.
Do you know what you do? Do you know who Liliana is? You ever heard of her?
Yes, she's from Fall River,
right.
my
And what did
hometown.
Liliana tell us she was doing 6 days in advance the other day?
Was she? I think she was cooking for Thanksgiving.
She was setting the table.
Setting the table.
Set the damn table, peel the potatoes in advance, and drive to the airport. By the way, somebody who is listening at the top of the show when I admitted I went to the dentist on the wrong day today, says, what if you show up at the airport on the wrong day? That is a problem, but I can't handle that. I would say you have an obligation to your visitors to get them if at all possible.
Listen to this. This is Gary, all the way from Wisconsin,
What'd he
saying
say?
2 words, Logan Express.
Well,
that is a bus that you can take. I know people have taken that from the Cape. It goes right to the terminal. You hop right out.
Tell Gary, email Gary.
Public transportation.
Right, text him back. And what happens when the bus catches on fire? Then what are you supposed to do?
The bus catching
By the way,
on
Phil
fire?
Lang, what day is Phil Lang going to be here? December 8th, to his credit, the general manager of the tea, Phil Lang, is going to join us for an hour to take your questions about the tea. That is a public servant to me.
Here's Amber
Good for him.
from
He's going to do it
Worcester.
right at the library so you could ask him face to face right here. I'm sorry, go ahead.
As a traveler, I always arrange my own ride. They are gracious enough to have me, so I should be gracious enough to be responsible for my own transportation.
Who's that person again?
That is Amber from
Hey,
Worcester.
Amber. Wrong. Why does he not say wrong anymore? Can you look that up, Jamie? Why did he stop saying wrong?
Oh, here's a good one.
What's that?
Several years ago, this is a great point. My sister asked me to pick her up at South Station at 5 p.m. It was a nightmare. I said, never again. I am with you. I spent so much time fighting with people at South Station because there's no place to
They
park.
just went, you think the drive is harder than the flight they just took from wherever, sardined into their seat, treated like crap on an airplane that's like a cattle car?
I think it is very difficult to fight with the state troopers at Logan to say you can't stop, you can't stay. And it's the busiest travel time of the year. There's not these extra spaces that there might be at night, so you can kind of sneak in.
Can I correct you? And I don't mean to embarrass you. You've made
Okay.
a factual mistake, but I feel I have to correct you.
What's that?
Last time I picked up someone at Terminal C, there were at least 30% fewer F-bombs from the state troopers than there had been the year before. So I think I don't think it's as bad as it used to be.
Kate in Hanover, thank you for calling.
Hello, Kate.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
So it's a rare occasion when I agree with Jim.
Thank
but
you so much.
I am with him on this one. I think if you are taking the time and the money that it takes to travel on an airplane, I think that as a host, you should be able to pick them up. But it should be something that's established well in advance, not a day of thing.
Excellent point, Kate. And why do you think you have that obligation, which you and I both feel? Why do you think the obligation may be too strong, but something like an obligation is on the host? Why do you think that?
I mean, I don't know. I think it's polite.
So do I.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Kate, are
Kate,
you?
that was
Where
excellent.
are you from? Are you,
Hanover.
She's from Hanover. Okay, because we have texters who say this is a geographical thing. Here's one who says, "I was raised in the Midwest. It would be a sin not to pick someone up from the airport, regardless of time." And this person said they just learned this isn't the custom everywhere.
Oh, so you want to know if Kate, are you born in Massachusetts or where are you from?
No, I'm actually from Rhode Island, so I agree on the whole TF Green thing. It's a lot easier.
There you
TF
go.
Green, a
Kate, thanks for
hidden
the
gem.
call.
It is great.
When were you at TF Green?
I spent my entire childhood,
You
like
did?
half an hour from Providence. Yeah, picking up people there,
Did
dropping
you
them
really?
off. Yes, I did. And you could even do it from Boston. I can go right down 95. I would be much less stressful to drive all the way through Providence to Warwick than to go to Logan Airport and get screamed at.
You know, I don't believe that you would you're such a nice person. You would if someone was flying in for your Thanksgiving or your Christmas.
Me and my children?
Yeah, you would let them take
No.
a thing?
Well, my children, I picked them all up.
Okay, fine. Exactly. I knew this was
Yeah, I picked them
BS.
up at South Station many times. It would
I'm
be a
sure
lot
you
easier.
have.
But now I pick them up at the back bay. That's even easier. You don't have to go
Ooh,
quite so
that's a
far
good
as to
move.
South
Thank you.
Station. Lots of people say, pick them up at the Logan Express parking lot.
Brilliant. That is brilliant.
Pick them up at the lot.
That's great.
Let's
Where
go
do
to
you wanna
Nancy in Newport. What do you think, Nancy?
Hey, Nancy.
Hey guys, I have two options for
Yeah.
it. First off, if you value your time, you can kind of think about like what's my time is worth, and maybe take that money and put it towards a car service.
You're a genius.
That way they come off the plane, they have the little person stand in a nice suit with their little name. Everybody feels special, dreamy. The second one is, when people ask what they can bring for dinner,
Yeah.
say, you know what, you can bring my aunt and uncle from Logan. So,
That's a good one. Hey, Nancy, you know what you also, how great is it when you get off a plane and you're exhausted and fearful of how you're going to get a cab or a ride share, and you see somebody standing there with a little cardboard sign with your name on it. Is that not magic, Nancy,
Yes,
or what?
I've been hoping for that my whole life.
I think that's happened. I think I've had that once. Nancy, that was a great call. Thank you very much.
I've never had it. Oh, well. Okay, Jeff from Cambridge says, there are plenty of people for whom the silver line is perfect. It is also free. And that's true if they feel okay. I mean, a lot of people have a lot of luggage and they're not comfortable getting
Yeah, what
on
are they
it.
supposed to do?
Well, that's the problem. I think it's easier if you don't have a heavy load to carry you. And somebody else just said, there's a new bus service called Blue Apple that runs direct from the Mansfield commuter rail station to Logan about once an hour. And this
Well, it's
person,
great if you live in Mansfield.
It's great if you live with Mansfield. I'm not sure where that is. Where is Mansfield?
I don't know where it is. But in any case, here is Larry David. By the way, every week we do Who's the A-hole? Larry David has done a routine on it. In any case, he has something to say about a related issue, airport, not pickups, but drop-offs. Here's the scene discussing with Jeff, who is his friend and agent, dropping Susie, who is one of the great characters of all time, off at the airport. Here it is.
Jeff, you're taking me to the airport 1 o'clock. Don't forget, don't make any plans.
Airport? Oh, God. Why does he have to take you to the airport?
He's got to see me off.
See you off? You're not going to India. You're going to San Francisco. It's an hour away.
So what?
See you off. You'll be back that night.
You know what, Larry? It's not surprising to me that you're the only one of this group who's here as a single.
877-301-8970. Jamie just got back from Italy. He says, I got in a big fight with my family in Sicily recently. Not only did they insist they come and pick us up, despite us having our own rental car, but they insisted on the never-ending curbside goodbye on our way out. Let me leave in peace, Jamie said.
That's a good one. That's a good one, Jamie. 877-301-8970. Who is the a-hole in this situation? The person that insists on the ride home from the airport or the people who don't insist? Is that right?
I don't know, but I think people know what you're talking about. Good.
Let's go to John in Stoneham. Hi, John.
How you guys doing today? It's been a while since I got to talk to you.
Nice to talk to you, too.
So I think everybody agrees that Jim's wrong.
Thank you. Every week. Thank you.
I have a fun twist, though. My sister is flying in from Iceland and hosting Thanksgiving.
There's a big volcano in Iceland, right?
Yeah, somebody told me about it, and I'm not sure if it's exploding or not, but their pictures seem happy and cold.
Oh, good. Okay.
But my cousin was nice enough to go and pick them up on Thanksgiving morning and then take them back to their own house where they're going to host for us.
Wow, that's pretty good, isn't it? That's pretty good.
I'm thankful for something.
No, that is something to be thankful
nice.
of.
That is a good one, John. Thank you very much for the call.
877-301-8970 is our number.
Nay from Acton makes a great point. Plus, you've had to clean the whole house for Thanksgiving. Least they can do is get their own transportation.
Well, I don't understand this notion because you're doing other things that it's okay to abandon people at the airport at a time when there's...
You're not abandoning
You know, it's the busiest travel weekend of the year.
That's right.
And
That's
they're
why
going to be
it's
there.
going to be hell on wheels at Logan Airport because no one lets you stop by the curb and wait for your relatives. Ian from Marblehead, thank you for calling.
Ian.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Excellent.
And I do agree with Jim that C is definitely the worst. But my little trick to go in is, everybody's coming on arrivals. Just go in, to departures and pick them up upstairs.
That is brilliant, by the way. Do you listen to this? That is brilliant. That is brilliant. You go to departures upstairs instead of arrivals downstairs, and you miss almost the whole crowd. You're a genius.
That's
you ever done that,
That's
Ian,
what
or
I
no?
do every time.
You do?
Well, that's what I do when it's a busy day like this.
Yeah.
When everybody's coming in and they're coming in hot. And
How many times have
like,
the state
up in
troopers
the stuff.
arrested you for it, by the way? Any?
Never once. They've asked me to go around a few times, but they usually let it go because they, offset everything from departures to arrivals. And anyway, that's my hint here.
You're a problem solver, and we love it. Margie, I hate to say this. I'm really sorry to say this, but you're...
You're wrong. Playing a...
That was a horrible Donald Trump. He doesn't say it like that. That was Trump from a Hillary Clinton debate.
Oh.
He doesn't say wrong. He says wrong.
Like he always said, China.
Please
China,
find
for
wrong
China.
for me, not wrong. He doesn't say wrong. That was the only time he ever said wrong.
Okay.
He says wrong.
Deb from West Roxbury makes an excellent point.
What is it?
If they take the red eye and expect you to be there at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Well, okay, that's the exception proving the rule. I mean, let's not talk about 6 a.m. arrivals. By the way, 6 a.m. arrivals is the time you can go get them. It just occurred to me when there's not going to be any traffic.
What are you talking about?
I don't know what
The
I'm talking
expressway is jammed at 5:30 in the morning.
Thank you.
And I would say, Jim, looking at the texters, that this is a 50-50 break.
Wow, that's really exciting.
A lot of people say, this is Tim from Lowell, of course pick up your guests. They already took the trouble to get to you. It's not that hard and far cheaper to drive to Logan than to fly home to see everybody at the holidays.
That's a good point.
And then somebody else says, it really depends if you like them.
Oh, that's really the most important point.
And you really want to spend more time with them. Otherwise, let them walk.
It is pretty great when you pick somebody up at the airport, how excited they are and how excited you are to see them. I know it's a strain to get that.
I know, it's kind of like in the movies,
it is
right?
a great kind of thing.
It's like when Harry Met Sally.
They say there's a romantic thing.
Yeah, there's a romantic thing going on. Do we have the Harry Met
No, we don't.
Well, anyway, in that movie, Harry Met
We know
Sally,
what it is,
there's a line where Billy Crystal's Harry says to Meg Ryan's Sally, talking about romance, that Giving an Airport Ride is a classic early stage romance movie and set up for eventual disappointment because, as Billy Crystal says, eventually things move on and you don't take someone to the airport, and I have never wanted anyone to say to me, how come you never take me to the airport anymore?
By the way, speaking of Harry Met Sally, the most famous scene is?
Oh, I'll have what she's having.
The orgasm. And then I
Yes.
believe it's Billy Crystal's mother who's playing the part.
Rob
Am I right,
Reiner's
John?
mother. Yeah, Rob Reiner's mother.
Rob Reiner's mother, who is sitting at the next table after Meg Ryan has the orgasm, or the fake orgasm at the table, and the server says to Rob Reiner's mother, what do you have? She says, I'll have whatever she's having.
Yeah,
which
that's
is
a
pretty
great
good
movie.
line.
That
was a great
one
movie.
never gets old. Bill from New Hampshire,
That
what do you
was
think,
great.
Bill?
Hey, Bill.
Hey, Marjorie, you're going to think I'm the a-hole because I'm looking forward to picking my daughter up at the airport.
Oh, you're a great dad.
Now, why? Why
And
does
my
that...
other daughter,
Yeah, good.
well, she's away at school. She's getting her master's degree, and I haven't seen her for a while. And my other daughter is in the Netherlands, and she's going to be coming home in December, and I'm going to pick her up. She's studying abroad right now. So I look forward to those things, and I know
Hey,
it's
Bill.
tough, but I was going to give you that tip too about go upstairs. You never go with the arrivals. You go to the departures when you're picking up.
Hey, Bill, when you first lock eyes on your daughter, whether it's now or the one coming home from the Netherlands, how great is that moment?
It's the best. I'm telling you, there's tears in my eyes already, Jim, thinking about it.
I love this guy.
Okay,
that
Bill.
was beautiful.
I got
Bill.
a good
Love
story
it.
for you. I hope I don't get teary-eyed telling this story. I went to college in California.
No.
I'm going back after Christmas, and I said to my father
You're getting
said,
teary already, by
"I'll
the
give
way.
you a ride to the airport." And I said, "Well, Dad, I don't need a ride
Oh,
to
I
the
know
airport
this
because
story.
I'm going to go up a couple of days early and party with my friends in Boston. So I'm already going to be in Boston. I don't have to worry about it." So I come up and party with my friends in Boston for a couple of days, and then I get to the airport to fly to California. My father's driven up there anyway from Fall River, and these
Yep.
were the days before 9/11 where you could see the people in the airplane, and he's in the window waving to me as the plane is taxiing down the runway. I know, it's a tearjerker.
That's a great story,
Isn't that-
too.
yeah, I had a
Hey,
great-
Bill,
great
that made
dad.
my day. I love that story. Thanks for calling. We really appreciate it. That's a pretty beautiful story, isn't it? The two daughters
It's a
picking
great
up Bill.
story.
Isn't it great?
It's a great story. I like my story as
I
well.
like your
Joe,
story
Jim.
exactly
Thank
as
you
much.
very much.
Exactly as much.
You almost
Marjorie,
forgot to say that,
Marjorie
Jim.
can never even say she went to Stanford.
I
It's
went to
like-
Stanford.
Yeah, I went to school in California.
I did. I went to a hotshot school.
It
out
is a
there in
hotshot
California.
school, which means you
That's
must
right.
have been fairly smart.
It was smart
Were
enough.
you first in your high school class?
No, I was not.
What were you, like third?
I wasn't even in. I wasn't even. I was in the top 20.
Really?
Yeah, there were a lot of smart people at my high
There
school.
were?
What
What
a lot of
happened to
people.
them?
They went to great schools. They
Didn't your
went.
boyfriend, isn't he a billionaire or something now? Your the football player?
Two of them from Stanford.
them are
Two of them.
billionaires?
Yeah, I went back to my reunion and I thought, boy, I blew it.
By the way, an anonymous texter says at 6 a.m. the bus lanes should be empty for Marjorie to drive in.
That's correct.
Because she drives in the bus lanes. By the way, that's a great point. What do you care about driving in the damn airport? You're driving the bus lane anyway. So what's the problem?
I'll tell you something. It was cold this morning, like 27
it was.
degrees.
It was.
This morning
It
we
was
were driving
cold,
to work here. You know, it was empty.
Bus lane?
The bike lanes.
Bike lane.
The bike lanes.
So
were
did you
empty.
drive in the bike lane?
Yes, I did. I wasn't the only one either.
You know, you had Stacey Thompson on yesterday,
Mhm.
and I was very jealous. You know why?
Why?
The woman who owns the cleaners that I go to.
She's a bicyclist.
She's lost a huge percentage of her business. You know why?
Because no one can park there
No
anymore.
one can park anywhere near
Yeah,
her
well,
business.
it's true. It's a point. It's a point.
So,
Sam-
Marjorie, Jamie has an interesting
are we
question
done?
for you.
No,
we
we're
talked
not
about
done
bus
yet.
lanes.
Yep.
We talked about bike lanes. If the sidewalk is empty, why don't you drive on that too?
You gotta do what you gotta do. You know what I mean? I gotta get here in time. If I have an opportunity, just go right up in that curbing and barrel down the side of the
Pam
road.
in Boston, you have 30 seconds. Take it away. Hi.
Hi, just want to reiterate that the departure area upstairs is so much easier,
Boy,
and I
yeah.
have a guy that does pick me up from all my when I do go traveling from there, and he has been doing that the last times. I was annoyed at first, but it works so much better. You just jump into the elevator with your suitcase and then go upstairs. But I picked someone up from the airport, although Thanksgiving morning, maybe I would treat them for the Uber because I'd be too busy cooking.
Well, you covered every
Yeah.
base.
Pam, you know what a lot
Departures
of
are
people
the
have said
key.
too? The cell phone lot. That's a good place. They
It's
hang
hard
out in the cell phone
sometimes
lot.
to find the cell phone lot if you're not familiar with Logan. It's a signage. I hate the term signage. Is not that easy. By the way, they finally found the real Trump. Thank you, Pam. Here it is. Wrong. Wrong. That's right. That's what I was looking for. Wrong. That's what he said. Why did he stop saying that? Steve Bannon told him to stop saying
I don't know. I don't know.
Wrong.
We're done for today.
We are.
Thank you very much for listening
We'll
to
be back
another edition
tomorrow,
of Boston Public Radio. Thanks, people that came down to the Boston Public
Thank you
Library.
all. We appreciate it.
Keep
Thank
up
you
with us
very much.
24/7 by way of our podcast. When we have a 3-hour one and a half-hour one, I would recommend the latter, not the former. Tomorrow, NYU medical ethicist Art Kaplan, Harvard national security expert Juliet Kayyem, media analyst Brian Stelter. I can't wait to talk
Neither
to him
can I.
because his new book is Network of Lies, the epic saga of Fox News. He's singing my tune. The epic saga of Fox News, Donald Trump, and the battle for American democracy. Also, playwright Ryan Landry and Jack Spillane of the New Bedford Light and Fallon Navarro, a UMass Dartmouth art student displaced from her school by a very, very horrible decision by
story.
UMass that really gave New Bedford the shaft. And we're going to talk about them and all these students.
Before you thank people,
Yes.
Ryan Landry's Christmas show, which I think opens November 30th. Two people we greatly admire have a partner. Do you know
That's
who they
right.
are?
That would be Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan.
That is correct.
As puppets
As
puppets.
puppets.
Yeah, we're not going to
But
be
we
actually in the
voiced the
play.
puppets.
That's right.
We
Our
voiced the
puppets are
puppets.
in the play.
They are.
Anyway, we do want to
Wrong.
thank our crew.
Not wrong. It's right.
Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss. Our engineer is John the Claw Parker, who knows everything.
He does know
and our executive producer is Jane Bologna. He's
Who
not
doesn't
bad
know
either.
that much, but actually it's okay. But it's balanced with
It's
John.
balanced, that's right.
And him, so
we want
it
to thank the
works out
BPL
fine.
team as well, Maddie Geyer, Angelica Marrero, and Steve Baracci. I'm Marjorie Egan.
I'm Jim Browning.
Thanks again for tuning in today. I hope you have a great afternoon, and I hope you can tune in tomorrow.